How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
is the end. I'm burning in the there's no place to hide. I'm burning in the this is the final time. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the there's no place to hide. I'm burning in the this is the final
What's up, guys? What's up? Happy Tuesday. Okay, we're going to try yesterday's stream again because, of course, yesterday's stream did not exactly go the way I wanted it to because the retards took over the chat and I didn't feel like dealing with it. And listen, I mean, it kind of as people are filing in, I do have some additional thoughts about yesterday because, it was a surprise that Pearl came on. I wasn't expecting Pearl to show up and act like a therapist. And, the thing of it is like, I understand the point that Pearl was trying to make is like, bitch, you're a streamer on the internet. You shouldn't be crying. But at the same time, like, I get it. There are people with way worse jobs than me. And honestly, I would rather shoot myself in the foot than ever go back and do an office job again. There are people with many worse jobs than me. That is all fine, well, and true. I guess I don't think that because some people have it worse than us, that we shouldn't be engaging like human beings. I just don't buy it. I think that and again, respect for Pearl. I understand her perspective on this. I find it to be very repressive and inauthentic. And I really thought about this a lot last night because Pearl's big thing on the stream yesterday was like, just ignore it, come up with a plan for how to deal with it, don't address it directly, like doing kind of like the typical PR stuff. And I understand why she said that because she is a very different type of content creator than I am. But to me, like that whole thing of just like putting image and brand and having to present in the most perfect way on the internet, otherwise, you deserve to be attacked. It's kind of like, no, I fundamentally reject it. And I guess like some people might say, well, Karlyn, you're being overly indulgent, but I don't actually think it's indulgence. I don't think it's indulgence at all. I think I said from the very beginning, like, I mean, back in 2020, I said if I was going to do this streaming thing, there was one thing that was more important to me than anything else, no matter what type of content I ended up doing, no matter how I ended up showing up, because I had no idea what I was doing back in 2020. So I knew I was going to figure out what I was doing, right? I knew I was going to figure it out. But I said, if you're going to do this, you're going to present an authentic human experience. The ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, because I absolutely detest how sterile everything is on social media. I absolutely detest it. I think it presents a horrible view of humanity. And I don't think that that's good. And I've talked about this, I've talked about this on a number of occasions. I do what I like. Part of what I've thought about with a lot of what I do is creating a record for history. I've often thought, and I've been told by a million people, my work is not for right now. My work is for history. My work is for people looking back 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Like, my work will be fucking respected in hindsight. Unless it's burned by the socialists, which it might be. Actually, you know what? I'm not actually sure that my work will be respected with the benefit of hindsight, because conceivably they could just wipe it all out and it would just never exist. And that's kind of a depressing thought to think about. But I do think that if my work survives and my work is looked at 50 or 100 years from now, I absolutely believe it's going to stand the test of time. 100%. There's no one doing what I do. There's no one doing the type of archiving I'm doing. There's just no one. And so it is the record that exists, and it will continue to be the record that exists. But part of the record that I want to create with what I'm doing is I want to create a record of the human experience of doing what I do, because I don't like the idea of like I don't like there is a very real human cost to this space. And I'm not just talking about the online politics space. I'm talking very specifically about the far left. There is a very human cost for me doing what I'm doing, and it's not just getting attacked by conservatives all the time on the internet because they're retards that can't even begin to understand my work because they're not smart enough. There is a spiritual cost to doing what I'm doing. And I want that to be part of the record. I want that to be part of the documentation. If you look back throughout history, people that produce content historically absolutely did talk about their emotions. I mean, we can look back to like the founding fathers. The founding fathers wrote journals. They wrote letters to their wives. These are the documents that we have from that time period. They wrote op-eds in the newspaper. They wrote their memoirs, like pontificating about what they were doing, what they were thinking, why they did what they did. These are part of the historical record, and that historical record is valid. And a very big concern that I actually do have, and I feel, and this is like, people say, oh, it's a cope. I don't actually think this is a cope. I think this is actually just how I think about documenting this time period, is that I find the vast majority of content that's created on the internet to be sterile. It's sterile. It's boring. It's generic. Everyone is designed and primed and maked up and all this stuff to look a certain way. It's all fake. Most of it's not even real. And I find if that is the record that we have for humanity, I find that to be resoundingly disappointing, because it kind of feels like we have lost our humanity at that point. If everyone has to be perfectly plucked and primped and have the right push-up bra and like all this shit, and they have to have their makeup done in a certain way, and they're only allowed to look a certain way. We're only presenting some people. We're not presenting all the people. We're only presenting some people. The right people. It's like, nah, I don't really want to do that. So, with respect to Pearl and her point being that I have an easier job than a lot of people, which is true, that's very true, but my job is also exceedingly difficult in any number of ways. And the reason that I get to sit at home in my sweatpants and not leave the house and not have to go to work for a boss, which makes my job easier in some respects, it is extremely difficult to do what I do. It is extremely difficult to create the amount of content that I create by myself with no producers. It is extremely difficult to have to endure what's required to create my content, because I have to watch socialism every single day of my life. And when I'm not watching socialism, I'm thinking about it, I'm researching, and I'm doing something else related to it. It is extremely fucking difficult. There is a reason that I am the only person doing what I'm doing. And that's because it's really fucking hard. And I want to be able to talk about how it's hard. And I want to be able to talk about why it's hard. And you know what? Actually, hang on a second. Actually, I didn't actually have this part pulled up, but I should have it pulled up because I'm not the only one talking about stuff like this, specifically related to like the woman question and the appearance question. In fact, last night someone sent me something that Naomi Wolf had posted. Let me read this. And she's a beautiful woman. Naomi Wolf is a beautiful woman. I don't really follow Naomi Wolf that closely. But I do look, and she to me is like, she's beautiful. But apparently there was some sort of controversy where she posted a video of herself and people attacked her for her looks, and so she deleted the video. I have no idea because I don't really pay attention, but she wrote a big long post about it, and I want to read it because it's really relevant to what I was talking about yesterday. I want to address something. A clip of my speech in Lenox, Massachusetts about female infertility caused by the Pfizer vaccines was just posted. Hey, Dan, thanks for becoming a member of the channel. I really do appreciate that. Thanks so much. This is an extremely important message. Maybe I wore an unflattering dress. Maybe I did not look my best that day. Some female commentators in the feed below the clip decided to criticize my appearance. I happened to be in pain from an injury and struggling with walking, and I just can't take the annoyance of these comments right now, so I deleted the clip. You should consider, when you think about the world you want, the impact on female public figures of the constant criticism of their appearance that they endlessly receive. My whole career since I was 26, I was told I was either too pretty to be taken seriously or, as today, somehow not up to par, and I needed to improve something, or both at once, or a dress was too revealing, or a neckline was too low, or my hair was too big, or too unruly, or it was falling in my face too much. It is extremely difficult to stay focused on difficult work and on the challenge of delivering an important and painful message in the face of both the stresses of the work itself plus the constant sexist judgment of the public of public women's looks, including my own. And listen, I don't like pulling the gender card and I don't like pulling the sexism card, but I'm reading her words, and the majority of this message, I absolutely do understand where she's coming from. You get the leaders you deserve. And if you constantly wear down women in the public eye and force them to think about things that are not even important, rather than about the work at hand, eventually they will throw in the towel because they are human. Consider that the women you are bitchily judging may be in pain or struggling to walk or simply tired or preoccupied, or even consider that the mass murder of babies, which is the focus of my talk, is important, and your nasty comments about my dress or hair or body are not important. You are just acting out or bored or trying to make yourself feel better for some reason. So think about the impact you have on public women with these constant bitchy evaluations of them. And if you want any real leaders to show up, reprioritize and manage your destructive impulses. I'm done with this nonsense. You know who you are. And I was like, Naomi? Because the thing of it is that I don't think people realize when people say, just ignore it. You can't ignore it when you literally hear it all fucking day, every day of your life, and it never stops. It never stops. It never ends. And I'm not actually even self-conscious about how I look. This doesn't make me hate how I look. It doesn't make me hate who I am. It is just the constant, never-ending barrage of you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly. Here's an unflattering photo. Here's an unflattering photo that I photoshopped. Here's another unflattering photo. Here's an unflattering video. You're fat, you're ugly, you're fat. This is every day of my fucking life. And I'm not the only one. And, you know, guys can talk about how they make fun of each other too, and guys do make fun of each other. I've been around male spaces my entire life. Guys absolutely do make fun of each other, not to this degree. I'm sorry. I have seen men get made fun of because they're short. I've seen men get made fun of because they're bald. Not all day, every single day, for years of their fucking life. And when you're trying to do really difficult work, as I am, as Naomi Wolf is, as there are many other people that are trying to do, when you're trying to do really difficult, detail-oriented, highly fucking complex work, and all you hear is you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly, get off the internet, you're fat, you're ugly, here's a Photoshop picture of you that I did because I needed to make you look more fat than you looked before because you're so fucking ugly, and here's a video of you, and here's an unflattering picture, and here's another unflattering picture, and why are you catfishing everyone on the every day, all fucking day? At some point, I think it is fair to wonder, and at some point, I think it is fair to question, what the fuck am I even doing? Because obviously, what I look like is all that fucking matters to the majority of the people in the world. And at that point, can't we just let it die? Can't we just let it get taken over by the left? Because the left's going to win anyway. And if all the right has to offer, if literally all people on the right have to offer is, you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly. Here's a picture of you where you look fat. Here's another picture of you where you look fat. Here's a picture of you from 10 years ago where you look fat. Here's a Photoshop picture that I made where you look fat. Here's a Photoshop picture I made of you of Shrek. Here, you're fat, you're ugly, you're fat, you're ugly. Here's an emoji I made of you looking fat. Here's another video I made of you looking fat. And it's just like, what the ever-loving fuck? If people behave this way in person, they would be shunned by anyone around them. And if you wouldn't behave this way in person, it is not fucking acceptable to do it just because you're sitting behind an anonymous account and you're feeling self-conscious, so you need to beat other people up. So, Cal, thank you for the super chat. I can't believe we're here in 2025. Commenting on other people's bodies, good or bad, is unnecessary. You're wonderfully intelligent. Well, I don't know if I'm that intelligent, but I'm a big fan of you and your brain. Thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it. I'm not trying to do what other people on the internet are trying to do. And I understand that. I'm not a traditional content creator and I don't want to be. I am trying to create a space where we have an open air classroom and an open air laboratory to research the far left. That is what I am trying to do. And if people don't want to be on board with that and they don't want to take it seriously, they can get the fuck out. And yesterday, the stream melted down because there were enough people that were not taking it seriously that I didn't feel like dealing with it. Because, guys, I have tried to impress upon this view for years. Every time I do a stream like I did yesterday, people come out of the woodwork. I love you. I support you. You're awesome. All this stuff. People I've never heard from before. And while I do appreciate their kind thoughts, I really do. I appreciate people who tell me that. Where the fuck were you? Like, where were you? The most powerful people in any social system are the ones who are expressive. If all I see is constant abuse and toxicity and absolute retardation, then what do you want me to think? I don't know who's watching me on the other side of the computer. I am sitting in my second bedroom in my townhouse looking into a little webcam that I've got jerry-rigged to the top of my computer monitor. I don't know that you specifically are sitting there. I don't know that you specifically appreciate what I do. I tend to assume that half of the people watching me on any given day are watching me to find a clip that they can take out of context to try to attack me. Because that's the experience of the feedback that I get. And so, if you want to be here and you want to take this seriously and you want to watch the content and you want to engage with it, then at some point the community has to start self-correcting itself. Because if it's just, let's beat the shit out of Karlyn all day, every day, I can do this stuff quicker on my own. I don't actually need to be doing it publicly on the internet. I can make clips quicker on my own. I can watch content quicker on my own because I don't have to stop and break everything down and explain it to people. Oh yeah? Too much drama? Too much drama? Banned. Bye. You don't have to be here. You're from Canada anyway. Get the fuck out. I don't care about you. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say? Anyone else want to get banned before we start the stream? We might as well ban the idiots now, to be honest with you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. All right. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah? You just got permanently banned. Bye. That was a conservative pretending to be a communist, by the way. Which also happens all the time. Because they're such pussies that they can't possibly go under their real name. Conservatives are such pussies, they can't possibly own their own words. Anyway. Hey, so guys, check this out. Well, actually, let me just show you this real quick. You guys asked me to make this image. Do you like this image? What do you think about that? I wasn't going to do this yet, but do you guys like that image? People asked me to make the sunglass thing. I don't know. That's the first. I think it looks kind of cool myself. So that might be going on a t-shirt soon. We'll have to see. Let's see. Guys, breaking news. Hey, thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. Breaking news, guys. Libs of TikTok is on the case. Breaking news as of yesterday. Libs of TikTok is on the case. Holy shit. Seattle Public Schools has LGBTQ resources on their site for kindergarteners, teaching them they can be transgender. They want to push made-up pronouns, promote gender ideology, and tell little kids they can be the opposite sex. Seattle Public Schools needs to be immediately investigated and defunded. Oh, wait, it gets better. Hey, thanks, Kazmar. Thank you for being a member of the channel for 35 months. I really do appreciate it. And as you can see, I have Libs of TikTok blocked because I have absolutely no desire to interact with this Jewish bitch at all. But it's funny. People started forwarding me this post when they saw this video. And I was like, oh, doesn't that look familiar? Guys, does anyone recognize this? This is from yesterday via Libs of TikTok breaking news. Does anyone recognize this? Anyone? It looks deeply familiar, doesn't it, Reagan? But it's only going to be familiar with people who've been around the channel for a long ass time. It looks. How could anyone have ever known about this? It looks deeply familiar. It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And I'm going to show you. Check this out. 3 fucking years ago. Let me make this big so everyone can see it. Let me make this big. 3 years ago. September 7th, 2022. This was so long ago that I didn't even have hair. I covered this story so long ago that my head was still shaved, okay? And I did a whole stream about this. I did a whole stream covering the Seattle Public Schools, going through the Seattle Public Schools website. This is a 4.5-hour investigation. We watched multiple videos of this guy. We watched all of his little LGBTQ reading kit. I released all this information. But you know what? Bravo, Libs of TikTok. Bravo. Finally catching up. It only took 3 years for the preeminent anti-woke account to cover the story that I covered about the Seattle public schools back in September of 2022. So you want to know why I get frustrated when all I hear from people is about how I look? Because, well, people are so focused on things that don't fucking matter. The entire conservative establishment is literally years behind the ball. This is not theoretical. This is not just me. People think I'm exaggerating when I say I am weeks, months, or years ahead of conservative influencers. People think I'm just making that up. They think I'm just patting myself on the back. I'm not. I am actually literally years ahead, 3 years to be exact, of libs of TikTok. It's not theoretical. And so when people are focused on things that don't fucking matter, perhaps they're overlooking the things that actually do matter. And perhaps they should be paying more attention to, I don't know, what their little darlings are learning in public schools. Because anyone that was listening to me 3 years ago already knew all of this. It was not new information. But breaking news, lives at TikTok, broke the story. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, man. I am just saying. Anyway, couple of things to talk about before we get started. And we are going to be doing, guys, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be watching a secretly recorded live stream that I recorded a couple months ago. This is part of the Revolutionary Socialism Conference. Now, the most important thing that we recorded out of this conference is that we got that Texas State University professor fired, which was pretty rad. And that came out of this conference. But this conference was 2 full days of far left insanity. And to date, the only people who have seen the full presentations of this conference were the people that were watching it with me live, because we did this as a spy stream infiltration. It was a supporter exclusive because I keep these things supporter exclusive to cut down on the amount of error that might be made in terms of recording the content. It was a phenomenal conference. And so what I've decided to do is to go back and maybe watch some of the presentations in it and watch them publicly, because my recordings of this conference are the only full recording that exists. The conference organizers were not recording the whole conference. They recorded portions of the conference to make them publicly available later. But in terms of like the really good stuff, the discussion, the back and forth where they're hashing out their ideas, where they're saying the quiet part out loud, the conference organizers didn't record that at all. And so I have the only full recordings that exist of this conference. And that's really good information. And so we're going to watch some of them publicly. Maybe we'll even watch all of them publicly. And part of the reason we're doing this is because one of the efforts that I'm focused on for the rest of the year that I would really like to have done and in very good, maybe not done, it'll never be done, but I want to have it in really good shape, is I am working on the Decode the Left dictionary that you guys have been begging me for forever and ever and ever. But I'm not doing just a normal dictionary because that would be too easy. And I don't do things the easy way. I do things the difficult and time-consuming way, because ultimately the difficult and time-consuming way is better. It's more artful. It's more useful. But it is also difficult and time-consuming. So yeah, hang on one second. Hang on. I'm gonna take a drink of coffee. So, the way that I'm doing the Decode the Left dictionary, and this is actually currently live on decodetheleft.com. It's decodetheleft.com/dictionary. There's not a ton on it right now because I'm still working it out. But what I'm doing is I'm making basically categories of content. And within those categories of content, you're going to be able to click in and find resources. You're going to be able to find things like this meme that Mizakan made that explains how capitalism is connected to everything. Or you're going to be able to go in and find things like Zoran Mandami's team member and what they had to say about capitalism in their book, because one of the things Mizakan does that I'm super grateful for and I really want to make sure we're utilizing, Mizakan reads all the books for us and then he creates these awesome graphics that he puts on his Twitter account, and he has told me that I can use those graphics, and of course we want to make sure we're giving him full credit because he's doing the hard work here, but we can use these graphics to kind of categorize things out to provide references for when we say that slavery is linked to capitalism. Here is an actual leftist saying that slavery is linked to capitalism. Here is the book that they're saying it in. Here are all sorts of other reference points. And so we're putting those all in an online dictionary so people can find them. But I don't just want it to be book quotes. We have tons and tons and tons of video clips from the far left. We have video clips on YouTube. We have massive archives of thousands of hours of training. I have video clips on my Substack. We have video clips across like 5 different fucking Twitter accounts. Thanks, Casmar. It is Giving Tuesday. People can feel free to give me money on Giving Tuesday. That'd be pretty great. So one of the projects that I want to work on in December is I really want to go back through some of my other content and go back into the archives and maybe rewatch some presentations with the specific eye on creating really concise video clips that we can use to put in this dictionary. Now, it's not just going to be for the dictionary, though. I want these video clips for the Occupy Libraries project, because the Occupy Libraries project, I want to be able to give people clips that they can go into their communities and use to demonstrate the language of the left. So I want to be able to use it for that. I want to be able to use clips for the book, the re-education book I'm writing, where I'm writing a book about all of this stuff for people right now. And I want to be able to have clips that people can reference to back up ideas that I'm talking about in the book. So the clips that I want to make, and I'm really just kind of going back to basics. And listen, it's not that we aren't going to reuse a lot of the clips that we already have, but like a lot of the clips that we have weren't actually made with an eye on them being educational material. It was made for social media stuff on the internet, because that's just the way it goes. Some of those clips are useful as educational material. Some of those clips are not as useful for educational material. So I'm trying to be really kind of like specific with my strategy of how I want to clip this information and how I want to present it so that people can actually find it useful to be able to understand the language of the left. We can also insert it into presentations. We do all sorts of stuff with it if we have it formatted in the right way. Hey, thanks, average person. I really do appreciate that. So the project that I want to work on in December, and I'm going to be asking for your guys' help if you want to participate, is I want to go back and watch a bunch of older presentations that maybe we've already seen, but specifically I'm looking for clips that I can use to demonstrate far left ideology and that we can use to go out and teach people what this is in a really clear and concise way. And so that is part of one of the reasons I want to go back and watch these presentations from the Revolutionary Socialism Conference. And we are going to be taking it a little bit slower through the presentations, because I will be just clipping things live, or at least like making notes of where I need to clip things later, so that we can just have all this stuff banged out. And if you guys want to help out, because one of the things I know about people in my community is a lot of you guys watch far left content on your own. Okay? So a lot of you guys, just for fun, will watch socialist and communist videos that we aren't watching on the channel together. And I appreciate when people do that. And oftentimes when people do that, they then get in touch with me to say, Karlyn, you should watch this. It has this clip. Karlyn, you should watch this. It has this clip. Well, I don't have time to watch everything, but if you're watching those things anyway, can we just start to make notes of sections to clip? Because I made this form, and you can find it over on the Substack. You can find it if you are on the Substack here, contribute clips to the Decode the Left dictionary. It is also linked just from the dictionary website, so you can get to it from here. And basically, I made this form where you can submit clips you can submit things to be clipped. So basically, if you're watching like a Haymarket Books presentation or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, there's this amazing clip halfway through it, go to this form, and what I need you to do is tell me where you got the clip, tell me, link to the original video, Tell me why you think this is a great clip, what point it's making, and basically give me timestamps. I need timestamps. I need at least a beginning timestamp. An ending timestamp would be pretty great too. And then if you want to provide additional information, you can do that. If you actually made a clip on your own and you just have the URL for the clip, you can just provide the URL. That's fine. If you want to tell me what group this is in, like whatever. But basically, this is just a really simple way for us to be able to collect all this information and have it in a spreadsheet so that we can go back and clip things later. So I'm not asking anyone to do anything that they weren't doing already. If you're not watching leftist content in your like free time because you're not an insane person, that's totally fine. But for those of you who are watching leftist content, if you find things that you think are valuable for us, just fill out the form and let me know the timestamps, and we will log all that in a spreadsheet. And when we get to being able to clip this stuff, either through volunteers or I can do it, whichever, then we're going to have a log of here are all these amazing clips that we need to make. Okay. So a lot of you have asked me different ways you can help out. This is a really easy way. And again, if you're already watching this content just in your free time, it's like a no-brainer. Just make a note of the timestamps, submit the thing, make sure you give me the original URL to the video so I can find it. If you want to give me other information, that's totally fine as well. But this is designed to be really, really simple and something that you can literally do as you're just watching the video anyway. So that is a way that people can help out, and that is a big project that I'm working on right now. If you want to fund that work, head over to the Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Make sure you sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. I cannot do this without your guys' help. And while you're there, you can watch a video that you will never see on conservative media of Antifa teaching people how to slash ISIS tires with an ice pick. If you feel like it. If you feel like it. All right. Oh, one more thing before I get started. So, yeah, it's December. And I didn't want to do any sort of fucking Black Friday sale in the merchandise store. It's just like I'm so sick of getting messages and notifications telling me to buy shit. I was like, I don't want to contribute to that insanity. People know I have cool merch in the merch store, and if they want to buy stuff, they can. So we're keeping it simple in the merch store for the holidays this year, guys. We are keeping it simple. There is a merch discount for the next 2 weeks in the Unwoke Art Store. Or not the Unwoke Art. It used to be called the Unwoke Art Store. I still haven't flipped the switch on that. The Red Menace Supply Company. I changed the name. There is a sale going on where if you spend more than $100 on anything in the store, and everything is included, you get 25% off your whole order. So everything in the store is basically on sale as long as you buy $100 or more of stuff so that you can get some presents for people. I'm going to be putting up some wrapping paper and stuff like that. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But I also, for the holidays, have brought back some of my favorite designs as kind of a limited edition sale, because I've had a whole bunch of different designs in the merch store over the years, and I do a lot of limited edition stuff, and so not all the designs are available forever, but these are 6 of my favorite designs that I was like, I want to bring them back for the holidays. If I love them, I think other people will love them too. And so we've got the classic Mickey whiteness means capitalism design, which I actually don't have this on a t-shirt yet, and I need to order it for myself. We have the whiteness means capitalism soup can, which is my Warhol inspired design, which I just like. I feel like the soup can has not gotten the credit, honestly, that it deserves, because it's fucking awesome. I actually wear this shirt personally. I wear this shirt all the time. This is one of my favorite shirts just because I think it's just like a really sexy girl that says men are not women. I love that shirt personally. It's one of my favorite things I've ever designed. We've got, this is also great. This is also one of my favorites. I get so many compliments on this design, the Wear in 1984 design, which you can't, by the way, I tried to recreate this in Midjourney. I made this in Midjourney years ago, like I made this in Midjourney, I think in like, I don't know, almost 3 years ago or something like that. I tried to recreate this because it's like one of my favorite designs of all time. I couldn't do it Midjourney won't create this now. And I'm like, man, that's a shame because that was a really fucking kick-ass design. And so I brought it back to the store. Let's see, what else do we have? We've got the real Marxism design, and I've got the pint glass in there where you can see like the design literally goes all the way around the pint glass, which is cool. And then the last one is just, I just love this design. I just think it's real cool. The Be an Outcast design kind of seems a little bit appropriate. Anyway, so I brought back my 6 favorite designs into the Unwoke, or the god damn it, I'm eventually going to get out of the habit of saying the Unwoke Art Store. The Red Menace Supply Company. We also, of course, do have the McCarthy series. We have a couple other designs, like standard, kind of like generic designs. We've got the Decode the Left designs. We've got the Red Menace Red Menace Collective designs. We've got the Center for Left Wing Studies. Lots of cool stuff. And of course, all purchases do go to support the work I'm doing. And I really do appreciate it. All right. Who's ready to watch some trannies? You guys want to watch some trannies? Should we watch some trannies? Should we do it? Mount the like button if you're ready to watch some trannies. Let me get the setup here. We'll get the chat on the screen so you guys can see it. All right. The presentation that we're watching is from the Revolutionary Socialism Conference that I secretly infiltrated and recorded back in early September of this year. So yes, you're just going to have to deal with seeing me on the screen twice. Actually, I may do what I did last time and just like edit the setup so that like I go over it or something like that. That actually worked out pretty well last time. But you're gonna have to deal with seeing me on the screen more than once for a minute or so, but that's gonna be okay. And this is a session specifically about trans liberation and reproductive justice. And so I want to encourage people. I know that people are intimidated by me, and I do get why. I want to encourage people, if you have questions throughout this presentation about what they're saying, why they're saying it, what they mean by that, make sure you chat in, make sure you ask the question, because I would much prefer that people actually just ask the question rather than, make assumptions or things like that. So that'll be great. And we're just gonna watch it, and we're gonna break it down, and I'm gonna see what I need to clip and stuff like that. What is the Gnostic sex cult? Listen, if you don't know, you don't know. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you don't know. And that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Hang on, I'll show you what the Gnostic sex cult is.
What does I don't know. This might be coded, but I'm not sure. What does a Gnostic sex cult have to do with the far left's goal? This guy named Bot is going off about this Gnostic sex cult. What that?
And so we're just not going to answer that question.
Okay, so that's I figured that. So we're just okay. That's why I figured that. Yeah.
That's the Gnostic sex cult. All right. We're not going to talk about that anymore. Let's get into the presentation, guys. Mount the like button if you would be so kind, and let's get this party started.
And folks such as Ali, socialists on the ground in the Middle East right now. I think I can probably see the chair. Thanks everyone for the amazing talk on Intifada.
My pronouns
There we go.
Tempest Collective and Solidarity. My pronouns are she, her, and I'll be chairing this session. For the benefit of those who just joined us, I'll briefly re-explain the format of this session. Firstly, our speakers will be allotted 15 minutes each to lead off, followed by a discussion period of an indeterminate amount of time, because of the schedule. The speakers' remarks will be recorded. The discussion will not. Stack will be kept via the chat, in which all messages will be forwarded to either me, the chair, or moderators. In order to better stimulate discussion and include contributions from oppressed peoples, progressive stack will be in order. In order to join the stack, send a message to me and not the other administrators.
There we go.
There is no general chat.
Now we're cooking.
To keep things on the rails. If you self-identify as a member of a oppressed group, then please type in stack and a plus sign. If you have a question for either the speakers or the floor, type in stack question mark. In addition, if you need translation, please type in stack, and the language you'll be speaking, so I can explain that before I call on you. We all ask all contributions to be capped to 2 minutes. At 2 minutes, you'll be told by me to wrap up, and I will be moving on to
now you don't see me twice.
The next speaker at that time. Please be mindful of everyone in attendance and keep comments brief and to the point.
And yes, the crackle does persist, and we're just going to have to deal with it, all right? It is what it is.
At the conclusion of the discussion, the speakers will give their closing remarks. Again, we ask no recording or streaming of today's session.
Hang on. Was I not clear when I said if you didn't understand something, you need to ask a question? Was I unclear about the question asking? Guys, if you think something is gobbledygook, which it is not, but if you think something is gobbledygook, that means you need to formulate a question. So does anyone want to formulate a question in the chat, just so I know that you guys know how to formulate a question? Saying, this is word salad. That is not a question. It's also not true. So if you don't understand something, you need to formulate a question. What is stack? That is a great question. Okay. Does anyone remember the DSA conference from like 2019, where there were clips of the DSA conference that went around the internet where they were arguing about who got to stand in line first based on who was the most oppressed? Sometimes I've called this the woke oppression hierarchy, where people who have more oppression points get moved to the front of the line. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? Basically, the far left believes in creating a dictatorship of the proletariat. The far left believes in taking the hierarchy as it exists today and turning it on its head. Okay? So in order to facilitate that, this is how they run their meetings. When the far left has a conference presentation, just generally, what happens is, and you're going to see that happen here, there are like 3 or 4 people on the panel. Each person gets up and they give a speech for 5 to 10 minutes about whatever topic they're talking about. And then, because there's no hierarchy at leftist conferences, they have to bring the audience into the discussion. So at normal conferences, there are presenters, and the presenters say what they want, and the presenters are on the top of the hierarchy, and the audience is just there to listen and maybe ask a question or two. At leftist conferences, because leftists don't believe in hierarchy, this is not about identity politics. No, stop. At leftist conferences, because leftists do not believe in hierarchy, they basically are looking for ways to remove the hierarchy between the speakers and the audience. In order to do that, leftist conferences always have they have an extended discussion period. It's not usually just like the normal kind of like Q&A period. It's like an extended discussion where people can get up and they can say literally whatever they want to say. So if you go to like the Socialism Conference has a mic in the middle of the room. The presenters do their thing, they give their speeches, and then anyone gets to go up to the mic in the middle of the room and they get to literally say and do whatever they want. So it's not necessarily that they're just asking a question. They can do an interpretive dance, and we've seen that done. They can do slam poetry, and we've seen that done. They can promote an event that they have happening, and we've seen that done. They can say whatever they want. But one of the things they can also do is ask the presenters questions or say, here's my thoughts about what you just said, and here's my pontifications or whatever. They get a standard time period. Usually it's about 2 minutes, and they get to say whatever they want in those 2 minutes. We've seen this when we've been covering the Socialism Conference online, okay? When they say stack is the order in which you go to the microphone. This is usually referred to as progressive stack, although it may just be called stack as it is in this case because these are not progressives. So what that means is the moderator is going to put you in an order at the microphone that is going to reflect how oppressed you are. The more oppression points you have via intersectionality, the more likely you are to be at the front of the line. So if you are a trans Black person or whatever, you're going to be ahead of a regular Black person because you're both trans and Black, so you have more oppression points. If you are a disabled white man, you will probably be ahead of an able-bodied Black woman because you're disabled, and disabled is a really big oppression point, okay? So essentially they're trying to make sure they're most oppressed are the ones that are at the front of the line, and so they have this thing called stack where you can get in on stack as an oppressed person or as a non-oppressed person, and then they decide the order that you speak according to that. Does this make sense to everyone? One in the chat if you understand. And the reason I went into more detail on this is it is actually important to understand how the left runs meetings and why they do it this way, because it is actually very specific to like a collectivist culture. Okay, cool.
And with all that out of the way, let's begin. When same-sex couples won the right to marriage equality.
All right. Okay. Do you think I'm taking you? Do you think so? Specifically for you, and this is the last time I'm going to do something like this because the next time I'm just going to ban you. Do you think that I believe you take this seriously if you're saying, well, you just gave me a really detailed explanation, but I think it's all gobbledygook? Do you think that I think you take this seriously? This is a specific question for you, Surf. Do you think that I think you take this seriously? I just gave you a really detailed explanation to explain something that you don't fucking understand. And your response to that is, it's all gobbledygook and stupid. Do you think I think you take this seriously? Answer in the chat now. Okay, so the answer is no. I don't think you take this seriously, so I'm banning you in the chat. You get a 24-hour timeout. You can come back tomorrow. If you ever do anything to make me believe that you don't take this seriously again, you're going to get permanent ban. Moving on.
The Supreme Court, many concluded that the United States was on a never-ending train to greater equality and justice. But the reaction from the right, who had been building their base with anti-abortion fanaticism and traditional marriage mythologies, has been swift, ferocious, and deadly. Just a few short years later, Roe v. Wade has been overturned, and women in anti-abortion states are dying in obscene numbers. And trans people's legal status and very identities are being erased. Is marriage equality next, or is the reactionary onslaught just a temporary phase? How can we organize to fight the bigots today and build a movement for genuine gender liberation? These are some of the questions we wish to tackle today. Our first speaker is Comrade Alejandra, a graduate student of history who focuses on labor history through the lens of gender and race. She is a member of Socialist Horizon in San Marcos and a public educator. Our second speaker will be Comrade Catherine, who is a member of Firebrand and the Denver Communists.
Wait. I just realized something. San Marcos is the home of Texas State University. Did they just say one of the speakers was in San Marcos?
These are some of the questions we wish to tackle today. Our first speaker is Comrade Alejandra, a graduate student of history who focuses on labor history through the lens of gender and race.
Oh!
She's a member of Socialist Horizon in San Marcos.
I bet you anything this graduate student that we're about to hear from worked with Tom Alter. Bet you anything.
And a public educator. Our second speaker will be Comrade Catherine, who is a member of Firebrand and the Denver Communists, who was radicalized by the 2020 Black Lives Matter and 2023 Palestine protests.
Remember, we didn't know that when we saw
Comrade
this.
Alejandra, you may begin.
Hi there. Thank y'all, everyone, for your time. Like I said, my name is Alejandra. Right, and so as we have seen,
recording in progress,
been building up to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And they have continued from there. They have not stopped there. There's a rise now, building this base, right, focusing on the nuclear.
If you need some time, I can call on Comrade Catherine.
Oh. Is it not working? Okay, sorry.
I could hear fine.
Okay, sorry. I got like a freeze. But right, we have seen this rise in focusing on the nuclear family, this traditional marriage that uniquely impacts people of color, women, queer, trans peoples, and especially if any of them are members of the working class. As socialists, we push for things for gender liberation, which includes free abortions on demand. It includes free gender affirming healthcare for all, free childcare. But there's a question, like, why focus right now on gender? And the quick answer, right, is that capitalism needs that nuclear family, right? It needs the workers isolated from communities. It needs homophobia.
Okay, I need to clip this. I already have a clip. I need to clip this. Hang on. We're just going to clip it now. Capitalism relies on the nuclear family.
Free childcare, family, this traditional marriage. Sorry, I got like a freeze. But right, we have seen this rise in focusing on the nuclear family, this traditional marriage that uniquely impacts people of color, women, queer, trans peoples, and especially if any of them are members of the working class. As socialists, we push for things for gender liberation, which includes free abortions on demand. It includes free gender affirming healthcare for all, free childcare. But there's a question, like, why focus right now on gender? And the quick answer, right, is that capitalism needs that nuclear family, right? It needs the workers isolated from communities. It needs homophobia. It needs transphobia. It needs that husband, wife with the 2 kids, because having this working class isolated, divided allows it to keep running. Anything that is outside of that binary is a threat to the system, which is why you see now this increased attack. Talk about Engels, writes about how the rise of the family, as we see it, a lot.
Okay, hang on. Hang on, got to get that clip. All right, does everyone understand why she said that capitalism needs the nuclear family? Does anyone have questions about that in the chat? About why she said capitalism needs the nuclear family? Does everyone understand that, or do you need me to explain it? Okay, let me ask this a different way. Why does capitalism need the nuclear family? Yep. It's how capitalism reproduces itself. Okay, you need me to explain? Okay. The reason the left needs to abolish the nuclear family is because they believe that the nuclear family is what reproduces capitalist cultural values. So remember, for the left, capitalism is not just an economic model. Capitalism is not just about going into the store and buying stuff. Capitalism is also a cultural model. And so what the left focuses on when we're coming into like queer Marxism, which is gender ideology, queer Marxism has to do with the nuclear family, the gender binary, stuff like that. What they're trying to do is dismantle the cultural apparatus of capitalism, the thing that keeps reproducing society with capitalist values. Okay, so how it works is capitalism created the gender binary. The gender binary is men and women. It put men in the workplace where they have all the power and all the money. It put women in the home where they did the unpaid and undervalued labor of literally having and raising the children. The children are the next generation of oppressed workers under capitalism because the nuclear family, the left believes, I'm explaining what they believe, I'm not telling you what I believe, the left believes that the nuclear family only exists because the workforce is going to need to be replenished when the people get older and retire, okay? So if you have mom and dad or it could be mom and mom or dad and dad. It doesn't need to necessarily be mom and dad. But if you have 2 people in a monogamous marriage, marriage is a form of propertied relationship under capitalism because it keeps property private within the family institution. You have two people getting married, having kids. They're raising those kids with capitalist values in which those kids are likely to grow up and get a job in the world and get married and have their own family that they also raise with capitalist values. This is called social reproduction theory. Social reproduction theory is the idea that social systems will reproduce themselves until they are disrupted. This is the core of why the left wants to abolish the nuclear family, because without abolishing the nuclear family, they are leaving intact the system that is literally reproducing capitalism. So the left doesn't want to abolish the family because they want people beholden to the state over their family. That's not what it is. I understand why people might think that, but that's not what it is. They want to abolish the nuclear family because that is the central means of reproduction of the system that they are trying to overthrow. And it's really critical people understand this. There is no Marxist society without the abolition of the nuclear family. There is no reality in the mind of the left in which they can produce their utopian society without abolishing the nuclear family. Okay? Everyone understand?
Right, to the system, which is why you see now this increased attack. Talk about angles, right, about how the rise of the family, as we see it, aligns with that rise of the establishment of the state, right? That is not a coincidence. He also wrote that the emancipation of women, right, will only be possible when domestic work is no longer claims anything but an insignificant amount of her time. And so oppression under capitalism is not just workers and the boss, but it's also these larger kind of social impacts, this kind of unseen labor that's happening in this domestic work. And it only has continued to become more exacerbated. The attack on gender is not just Roe v. Wade overturning, right? But it's also things such as what we're seeing with this new bill, right? The big, beautiful bill, which is attacking things like Medicaid. Over half of the people on Medicaid are women. Trying to remove funding from Head Start, early childhood care and education. Child care is already something that is very expensive, and this is only going to make that worse. It already forces people to have families to choose to have a parent at home because they can't afford childcare, and usually that will always be either the mother. Now with this bill too, with funding for nursing homes, disability, threatening to remove funding is only going to cause families to have to take on that role themselves, having to provide that care. And not only is it an economic strain, but again, that role, that care work, that domestic work will very likely fall on the women. And this is going to further restrict women economically. It's going to socially, we're going to see a rise in women possibly being forced to remain in dangerous situations even. Women are going to only sink further into poverty, which is the intention, right? Because if capitalists had to pay for all of this unpaid work, unseen work that women do, right, their profit margins would not exist. And so that is the goal, is to continue to keep putting these roles and these women in that place. And ironically as well, as we're seeing all of these cuts to fundings for all these programs, social services, we're also seeing a rise in pronatalism. And so how a group that wants to support people having more children is at the same time removing anything to support people having children. We have figures of creeps such as Elon Musk who are spouting these anxieties about the declining birth rates and civilization disappearing and having 14 children. And, there's like talks about discussing how do we encourage more married people to continue having children and reproducing. We're seeing things now as NatalCon. We're seeing having pronatalism conferences happening in the state of Texas. And you have speakers talking about, having workplaces essentially segregated by gender, prioritizing men with families, speaking about women being shamed about having careers, and just, again, this rise of pronatalism right alongside, ironically, the declining of services to support working class families. But it's difficult to talk right now about this attack on gender without considering, how the Democratic Party has been complicit in all of this. Even though, for example, with Roe v. Wade,
So this is where we're getting into shitting on the Democrats. I want everyone to understand this. They do not like that. These are revolutionary socialists and communists. They do not like the Democrats. They do not support the Democrats. They do not believe the Democrats supports trans people. They do not believe the Democrats support gender liberation and all this stuff.
How the Democratic Party has been complicit in all of this. Even though, for example, with Roe v. Wade, we still had the Hyde Amendment that was added, right? That limited or prohibited, federal funding being used to fund most abortions. And this disproportionately impacts working women, people of color. And the Hyde Amendment is annually renewed. It comes up for renewal every year. And it has been, without fail, renewed every year. And that is despite having 3 different Democrat administrations with trifectas. And yet it has been continued to be renewed. It was also never codified into law, despite those 3 administrations with that trifecta. And yet, when Roe v. Wade was eventually overturned, no one was more shocked than the Democrats.
And I want to emphasize this again, because I hear from the right all the time. The right believes that the Democrats just are the useful idiots of the left. The Democrats are implementing the left's policies. No, they're not. It is fine to not like the Democrat Party. It is fine not to vote for the Democrat Party. But can we please be intellectually honest? When we have communists and socialists on video over and over and over and over and over and over and over again telling us we don't like the Democrats, we don't support the Democrats, we don't vote for the Democrats don't implement our policies, the Democrats protect capitalism, the Democrats are no different than the Republicans, at some point you have to acknowledge the Democrats are not the useful idiots of the far left. The Democrats are not our friends. The Democrats are not our allies. The Democrats suck just as much as the fucking Republicans suck. But that doesn't mean that they are useful idiots of the communists and they're implementing a communist agenda. It is just not true.
Who continually exploited it for their campaign purposes, but never actually did anything to protect it, to expand abortion rights. Personally, as someone from Texas, where even before Roe v. Wade was overturned, it was essentially banned because of the 6-week ban. And so it's frustrating for working class people to see, this party that claims these things, that claims to support us, and also not doing anything to protect the rights, the few rights that we had, and then also end up blaming the people and blaming voters for those things.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is part of that capitalist system. They do not want to make any fundamental changes. And
I have to clip that. That was great. Perfect.
Also not doing anything to protect the rights, the few rights that we had, and then also end up blaming the people and blaming voters for those things. Because at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is part of that capitalist system. They do not want to make any fundamental changes, and said they can act shocked about these things being overturned, but at the end of the day, they are also complicit in this, which is why it is so important.
Actually, I'm going to go back. We're going to get that from the beginning.
Renewed. It was also never codified. It has right, that limited or prohibited.
I'm gonna make the biggest webpage I've ever made before of all the times we have socialists shitting on the Democrats.
being used to fund abortion. Maybe even though, but it's difficult to talk right about this attack on gender without considering, how the Democratic Party has been complicit in all of this. Even though, for example, with Roe v. Wade, we still had the Hyde Amendment that was added, right? That limited or prohibited, federal funding being used to fund abortions, most abortions. And this disproportionately impacts working women, people of color. And the Hyde Amendment is annually renewed. It comes up for renewal every year. And it has been without fail renewed every year. And that is despite having 3 different Democrat administrations with trifectas, and yet it has been continued to be renewed. It was also never codified into law, despite those 3 administrations with that trifecta. And yet, when Roe v. Wade was eventually overturned, no one was more shocked than the Democrats, who continually exploited it for their campaign purposes, but never actually did anything to protect it, to expand abortion rights. Personally, as someone from Texas, where even before Roe v. Wade was overturned, it was essentially banned because of the 6-week ban. And so it's frustrating for working class people to see, this party that claims these things, that claims to support us, and also not doing anything to protect the rights, the few rights that we had, and then also end up blaming the people and blaming voters for those things. Because at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is part of that capitalist system. They do not want to make any fundamental changes, and they can act shocked about these things being overturned, but at the end of the day, they are also complicit in this, which is why it is so important to have a revolutionary party, something that is separate, apart from the 2-party system, that is actually interested in making fundamental change to improve the conditions for the working class.
All right, that's a good enough clip. Making sure I save it. Just banning a couple people who are not playing nicely. Hang on one sec. Are you correct that the Democratic Socialists are not in any way connected to the Democratic Party? Well, okay, yes and no. Yes, you are correct in that the Democratic Socialists are a completely different political party. The only way that the Democratic Socialists are connected to the Democrat Party is that they're trying to take it over and co-opt it. Because the Democratic Party right now is extremely weak. They don't really have a lot of money. They aren't doing any organizing. They aren't really being productive. The only reason the Democrats are going to win in November is because the Republicans suck so badly and Trump sucks so badly that there's just no getting around it, honestly. But the Democratic Socialists want to be able to co-opt the apparatus, and they will take advantage of it if they can. Now, but the Democratic Socialists do not consider themselves to be Democrats. And I really want to make this clear. They might be a member of the Democratic Party because they're trying to co-opt its apparatus, but they do not consider themselves to be Democrats. They do not consider themselves to be liberals. They do not consider themselves to be progressives. They do not vote for normal Democrat candidates. Just because they're trying to co-opt the party doesn't mean they're going to vote for any Democrat. There are many Democrats that they will not vote for ever out of principle. In fact, the majority of which. So that is the caveat. Yeah, this is an identity politics. Queer Marxists are anti-identity politics. So again, guys, if you don't understand something, please ask a question. This person is not in favor of identity politics. This person is a queer Marxist revolutionary communist who is anti-identity politics. They do not support identity politics. Democrats and liberals support identity politics. Revolutionary communists and socialists do not.
And so for the ruling class, we have always had to have these divisions, right? That is the goal. Because if there's no divisions, then we don't, unite and take what's ours, all the wealth in society, what we ourselves produce. There are many more of us, and they are few. The bosses and the politicians divide us.
Hey, thanks, Marks lives over on Rumble, $10. Thank you for the hard work, Karlyn. I appreciate that, bro. Thank you.
Dividing us differently based on race, on gender, on disability, age, orientation, dividing us in, all these different ways. And even though there are certain groups, right, that are differently.
I am only going to beg so many times for people to ask questions instead of making retard statements. James, this is a retard statement. No, identifying as queer is not indicative of individualism. And anyone who understands queer understands why. Queer wants to eliminate and abolish individualism. Queer does not support individualism. Individualism is a component of capitalism, and queer liberation means the annihilation of capitalism. So no, this is not correct. I need you to follow the very specific instructions I have already given 4 or 5 times. And if you don't understand something, ask a question.
Oppressed differently. At the end of the day, we're all workers that are getting oppressed under the capitalist system, which is why we need to acknowledge that genders and certain groups are being oppressed uniquely, but still understanding we are all workers under this system. Women, people of color, queer people, like we said, could be more oppressed based on their unique circumstances. And it's this idea that we're in competition for resources. It creates all those divisions. Under capitalism, all these resources appear to be scarce, right? We appear like there's not enough, but it's a false scarcity that is being created by the capitalists. And ruling ideas are the ideas of the ruling class, as Marx says in the manifesto. And that is what things like homophobia, transphobia, sexism, racism are. There are these ideas of the ruling class that are passed off as this immutable, kind of common knowledge, unchangeable. But when workers decide to unite and fight back, that's when those differences can truly become irrelevant. These ideas start to fall apart and crack on their own. Abortion can only be won with united, right? Fighting back. Things like migrants, right now that are under threat can only be defended by a multiracial movement. Anti-trans violence can only be won by a multi-gendered movement. And so the question of the suppression is rooted in the question of solidarity, right? Because if an injury to one is an injury to all, then the workers united will never truly be then defeated. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
All right. Thank you, Comrade Alejandra. We'll move on to Comrade Catherine.
Recording in progress.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Can you all hear me just fine? All right. Tonight, I'm going to be talking about confronting the right's attack on gender and trans liberation. Over the last decade or so, transgender and queer identifying people have seen some major victories in cultural acceptance and representation through TV shows, pop culture, even electorally. However, weirdly enough, this made a lot of people very mad, but none have.
No, this is a good question. When the term worker is used, are they referring to a union worker or something more? They're referring to the proletariat. They're referring to anyone who is not a capitalist. So in this case, we are not talking about there's no, well, all these people are in unions, but this is not a specific thing about union organizing. So when they're saying worker, they're speaking very generally. They believe basically everyone watching the stream right now would be considered a worker. Even if you don't consider yourself a worker, they would still consider you a worker because they think that every single person is oppressed by capitalism.
Shown more outrage than those inside the MAGA movement. Even back in 2016, when Trump was running for his first term as US president, laws that would restrict transgender people from bathrooms and sports were framed as critical issues that represented a massive threat to society. Nearly 10 years later, at the beginning of Trump's second term as president, he wrote an executive order that changed gender to sex on government forms and also cut funding to groups.
This question doesn't even make sense. So for some reason, queer gender is okay, but not the infinity of spaces gender. What the fuck? Are you just making shit up? Who said the infinity of spaces gender? Because to queer Marxists, anything outside of the gender binary is fine. The goal of queer Marxism is to abolish the gender binary. Bro, the goal, do you understand what their goal is? Perhaps you need to start with a better question. This is for young thugs specifically. I understand you're black, but just try to work with the question I'm asking you for a second. Do you understand what the goal of queer Marxism is when it comes to gender? That's a yes or no. No, I asked you a question. I asked you a question. Do you understand what the goal of queer Marxism is when it comes to gender? That is the question. That is a yes or no. Are you capable of understanding the question? We need you to speak English. No fucking Ebonics in my chat. Okay, all right, permanent ban. Bye. Not smart enough to be here, black man. Go away.
Suspected of promoting so-called radical gender ideology. Trump has passed orders that would prevent transgender people from serving in the US military, defund institutions for alleged chemical and surgical mutilation of children, and also compel schools to, quote, keep men out of women's sports. This, of course, is a wording that is deliberately brutish and ignorant, because the goal is not to expose facts or science, but to vilify and demonize a small group of underrepresented people. This year, we can see a clear escalation in Trump's dangerous rhetoric against trans people, and he appears to be following through on his promise to, quote, defeat the toxic poison of gender ideology and reaffirm that God created two genders, male and female. In 2015, 21 bills were brought before the US legislation to target the rights of transgender people. 21. In 2024, at least 674 anti-trans bills were considered across 43 different states. Now, regardless of their success of these bills,
I just want you guys to really consider the absolute fecklessness of the Republican Party, where they have literally proposed over 600 bills claiming to protect claiming to protect like the traditional categories of gender, which is men and women. And there's not a single state in this country in which this gender shit is not being taught in schools. Trump has written executive orders about this stuff. The schools ignore them. The states try to introduce laws to ban this shit. The schools ignore them. And then no one does anything about it. And they but they lie to their constituents and they say, hey guys, Trump wrote an executive order. Don't worry, gender ideology is not being taught in school anymore, except that it is. And it never stopped. Republican Party is just the party of performativity. Exactly.
It's a very clear escalation of these sorts of legal attacks. These sorts of right-wing attacks are nothing new, though. Today, it's somewhat common to see transphobes screeching about public safety, seeking to police what consenting adults do, claiming they are, quote-unquote, protecting children. The right said Roe v. Wade had to be overturned because they were protecting unborn children. During the Jim Crow era, people were against ending segregation because it was considered a safety issue for protecting women and children. Immigrants get it too. Bigots will commonly claim that immigrants do more violent crime than others and are involved in trafficking people. All these concerns over public safety are superficial, rooted in bigotry, designed to distract workers from the real enemies, the bourgeois class that profits from our collective misery.
Capitalist class.
But now that I've talked about the attacks of the right, I would be remiss to skip past the role that Democrats play in oppressing the transgender people. Transgender people, like other marginalized people, are merely pawns in the—
Hang on. We gotta clip this, don't we? I'm just gonna clip it. I'm just gonna clip the other rant about the Democrats. It's our third clip already of the stream.
But now that I've talked about the attacks of the right, I would be remiss to skip past the role that Democrats play in oppressing the transgender people. Transgender people, like other marginalized people, are merely pawns in the electoral games that Republicans and Democrats play. Republicans use bigotry to fearmonger and incentivize their voters. Democrats, though some may do more shallow apologia for optics, largely avoid anything that their conservative colleagues would consider too radical. This was seen firsthand when Democrats stalled and even worked against the legalization of same-sex marriage. Democrats will unfurl their rainbow flags only when the masses demand it. When Republicans inevitably block to roll back these social victories, the Democrats go to brunch. But sometimes they will take a more active role in oppression, like when Biden signed the National Defense Authorization Act, which included provisions to deny gender-affirming care to children on military health care programs. Many Democrats voted to approve the bill, and the Democrat-controlled Senate actively opposed removing this provision. They simply wanted to leave it in. Biden also removed Title IX protections from transgender student athletes. Trump may have very well escalated the assault on transgender people, but he was merely following the lead of his predecessor. Even Kamala couldn't voice full support for transgender people. When she was asked if she believed transgender people should have access to gender-affirming care, she said that she would follow the law. To remind everyone, Kamala's interview was about her running for president, a position where she would ideally be able to influence the law and secure trans rights. But her answer is what? To follow the current rhetoric of disarming trans people of their rights and their identities? Of course, when Kamala's most lethal army and shut up, I'm speaking, let me do a genocide rhetoric lost Democrats the election, it took less than a moment for Democrats to line up in droves to blame the woke trans people for their miserable performance. But it goes much deeper, as even transgender Democrats have also proven themselves weak and unwilling to actually fight for trans rights. Last November, Congress introduced a rule that would ban trans people from using the bathroom that's most comfortable for them. This was a direct attack on Delaware Representative Sarah McBride, who was the first transgender woman to be a member of Congress. But Sarah did what Democrats do best. Many should already be aware of their famous slogan, when they go low, we go high, which really means we care too much about optics to do anything. To show her courage and restraint, she complied with these bigoted laws, claiming that she would be the bigger person. Good grief, Sarah. So I'm left here with one question. Why trans people? According to 2022 research data, only about 1.6% of the US population, the US adult population, identifies as transgender or non-binary. Other studies will conclude that gender-affirming care literally saves people's lives. And I, of course, will wholeheartedly agree with that. But there is an odd double standard around who can receive what kind of gender-affirming care. Because given all of the creatine, testosterone boosting, supplement, boner pill popping podcast bros out there, one would think there would be wider acceptance of gender-affirming care.
All right,
When a trans person
I got the Democrat clip, I think, so. That Democrat rant was good. Hang on. Now we've moved into complaining that some people can get gender care and not others.
For health care that conservative or liberal fanatics don't agree with, that person is a threat. That person is dangerous. But even the US Congress will confess that violence against trans people has doubled over the last 4 years. Trans people are more likely to be the victims of assault than the perpetrators of it. Violence against the trans community is both social and systemic and should not be overlooked. This hate-filled rhetoric, these delusions that trans people are so dangerous or are unstable and mentally ill, is all rooted in bigotry. And bigotry is learned. Capitalism breeds bigotry because it needs it to function.
All right, this is the clip Reagan was talking about. Capitalism breeds bigotry. Capitalism creates bigotry. Okay, let me explain this before the clip gets played, because I know there's going to be people who are confused by this. Capitalism creates bigotry because capitalism creates all identity categories. All identity categories they believe are socially constructed. So they believe gender is a social construct. They believe race is a social construct. They believe everything is not based in biology. It is created by capitalism to support the capitalist system. Therefore, because capitalism creates all the identity categories, capitalism creates bigotry, because bigotry would not exist without the identity categories. Do you guys understand? Does anyone have any questions about that? You're gonna hear this, they, them say this in the clip, but I wanted to explain before we get into it because I know what they're gonna say. How does the queer movement reconcile their no gender goals with the trans community? They're not the same movement. They're not the same thing. They're not working towards the same goals. It's conservatives who don't understand this. The queer community is very clear about this. Conservatives are not clear about this. They don't reconcile it. They're two different things. People who are transitioning from man to woman or woman to man are not queer. It is a separate thing. It's a completely separate problem. The problem is that conservatives don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and they don't actually listen to the left. And so conservatives have conflated the two because they don't understand the difference between trans and queer. Queer activists do not want people to be transitioning from man to woman or woman to man. They want to transcend or transform gender. Queer activists want to abolish the gender binary. Trans people who are transitioning from man to woman or woman to man are upholding the gender binary. I go into this in great detail in my Intro to Queer Marxism lecture. You can find it on the YouTube channel. You can find it on the Substack. That would be a good resource if you don't understand that. Let's see. How can they say capitalism created gender and race? Because that is what they believe. And by the way, you going to them and saying, excuse me, communist, do you know that you are wrong, that capitalism did not create gender and race? They're going to laugh in your face and they're going to keep believing what they believe. So saying that they're wrong doesn't actually mean shit. Okay, let's get this clip. Reagan says it's good. I believe her.
And should not be overlooked. This hate-filled rhetoric, these delusions that trans people are so dangerous or are unstable and mentally ill, is all rooted in bigotry. And bigotry is learned. Capitalism breeds bigotry because it needs it to function. Bigotry divides workers into smaller, more disconnected groups, which makes all of us, transgender, cis, gay, straight, otherwise, makes all of us susceptible to exploitation. Capitalists oppose queer lifestyles and reproductive rights to reinforce the capitalist family model, which our comrade Alejandro just spoke on beautifully. The ruling class gains massive profits from the unpaid labor of social reproduction, that is childcare, housework, elderly care, and maintaining the social infrastructure necessary for the reproduction and replenishment of the workforce. Under the misogynistic capitalist family plan, most of this work is unpaid and falls on women, creating a sort of impossible deficit to overcome if you don't fit into their narrow capitalist framing of what a family is. Transphobic ideas rip families apart and often send trans people into the army of reserve labors, also known as unemployment. They are disproportionately burdened with job instability, poverty, and homelessness. It is in the best interest of all transgender people to fight for care that goes beyond mutual aid to improve their material conditions. Threatening the hegemony of the capitalist family model by seizing their rights to healthcare could embolden the rest of the working class. Ending the threat posed by family rejection could remove a critical method of hyper-exploitation that affects multiple sections of the working class. Since the 1960s, we've seen a decline in social movements and the rise of neoliberalism. This has given way to more conservative and complicit queer politics that have often abandoned trans people. The struggle for trans rights has moved from the streets to the boardrooms of nonprofits, and we have little to show for our complicity. As revolutionary socialists, our duty is to oppose bigoted reactionaries and even the state itself, and dissuade others away from unrealistic visions of liberation through bourgeois reform. Instead, moving them towards solutions that build an independent and a fighting left. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without demand. Historically, our victories come through struggle. The ruling class will only offer concession when they think there is no other option. The struggle for Black trans lives in 2022 resulted in the conservative Supreme Court ruling that it is illegal to discriminate against workers for being transgender. A massive protest movement that is independent of both capitalist parties is able to stand, to fight, and win regardless of administration. Trans people make up a small fraction of the US population, but are natural allies with all workers who sell their labor to survive. We cannot corral trans liberation into the tight restraints of the liberal bourgeois while expecting a long-term victory. Instead, it should be built in solidarity with workers and other oppressed groups. Likewise, other factions of the working class should seek solidarity with transgender people. If the entire working class merely understood the struggle of their fellow workers, if we make the liberation of our neighbors our own business as well, we stand a chance to smash the system that oppresses us all. We should fight to win back emancipatory and anti-assimilationist gender politics and strategize as a united front around demands that materially improve trans lives. This yields more resources, more freedoms, and more inclusion, makes us stronger as a whole. Though we must actively fight for the rights of queer people, we cannot find long-term victory through reform. Gender and sexual oppression are rooted too deeply into these bourgeois systems. Queer liberation is not possible under capitalism. The beautiful diversity that makes up workers around the world will only blossom to its fullest form under socialism, where people are free to grow and express themselves fully. To achieve liberation, we must build a militant movement of the exploited and the oppressed, with a unified goal of seizing political and economic power from the capitalists. It's a choice that we all must make between socialism or barbarism. And our time is running out. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
All right, I'm getting that clip. I have some things to say to some people in the chat who were not listening. Hey, hey, I don't even know how to pronounce your name. Messel Mayball. Please explain to me what you just learned from that clip. I want an explanation from you about what this person just said. I will be waiting for your explanation in the chat because you were doing an awful lot of complaining, which leads me to believe that you were not doing an awful lot of listening. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I would like you to explain to me what you just learned from this person. And if you can't formulate that, then I need you to ask a question. And if you can't do that, then keep your fucking mouth shut. Josh, do you know where you are? Do you think that we are socialists, Josh? Do you have any idea where you are right now? Do you have any idea what's going on? And I do not give a fuck how old you are. You are in my classroom and there's no fucking yelling at the people on the screen because they cannot fucking hear you. If you have a question about what they're saying, ask a question. If you are just here to yell at the screen, that is not useful or productive, and I don't want it here. So, we are waiting for that Mezzle person to tell us what they learned from that clip. And if they don't say anything, they're getting permanently banned in the chat. I want an answer. You want to talk all the way through something when I'm clipping it? So if you're not implying that I'm a socialist, then why the fuck are you talking in my chat? Why are you ranting and raving over and over and over again about how socialism doesn't work? Guess what, bro? We fucking know. No, this was not about a queer Marxist going off the deep end. What was actually said in the clip? So, what I want to point out to you is that you did not listen. You whined, you complained, you asked me to play it quicker. Are you fucking serious? Are you fucking serious? You wanted me to play that quicker? You weren't listening to it when it was being played slow. Perhaps try listening next time. All right, we're going back and we're going to listen to this again. And this time I can talk because I already have the clip.
Or non-binary. Other studies will conclude that gender-affirming care literally saves people's lives, offering boosting, supplement, boner pill, reading of traded bigotry, child care, housework, elderly care, and wise makes travelers into smaller, more disconnected groups, which makes all of us, transgender, cis, gay, straight, otherwise, makes all of us susceptible to exploitation. Capitalism.
If you do not understand what they are saying, then you are the one who is stupid and ignorant. And you should formulate a question. Do you have a question? I'm going to train my fucking audience that you will ask questions. I'm so sick as I am so smart that I just can't comprehend that their stupidity and arrogance. No, bro, you're the fucking stupid one if you're not asking questions and learning. So ask a fucking question now. What do you not understand? What do you not understand, infections? What do you not understand? We're waiting. Entire stream stopped just for you. What don't you understand? Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last chance, infections. What don't you understand? All right, no questions forthcoming. That must mean he doesn't want to talk, so that's fine. He doesn't have to talk. Permanently banned. Bye.
Just oppose queer lifestyles and reproductive rights to reinforce the capitalist family model.
Hang on. Listen.
And bigotry is learned. Capitalism breeds bigotry because it needs it to function. Bigotry divides workers into smaller, more disconnected groups, which makes all of us transgender.
Bigotry divides workers into smaller, more disconnected groups. What that means is capitalism creates identity categories. The identity categories separate people into smaller groups. All right, Centurion, bye. No more talking for you. Banned.
Cis, gay, straight, otherwise, makes all of us susceptible to exploitation.
The categories of cis, gay, straight, otherwise make everyone more susceptible to exploitation. I need people to understand this if you're new and you're just being introduced to the idea that the radical far left does not embrace identity politics. It's Democrats who do identity politics. It's liberals who do identity politics. That is one of the reasons they don't like Democrats and liberals, because they believe that all categories create oppression. Listen again.
Bigotry divides workers into smaller, more disconnected groups, which makes all of us, transgender, cis, gay, straight, otherwise, makes all of us susceptible to exploitation.
The categories make everyone susceptible to exploitation by the capitalists that created the categories in the first place.
Capitalists oppose queer lifestyles and reproductive rights to reinforce the capitalist family model, which our comrade Alejandro just spoke on beautifully. The ruling class gains massive profits from the unpaid labor of social reproduction, that is childcare, housework, elderly care, and maintaining the social infrastructure necessary for the reproduction and replenishment of the workforce.
So I explained this earlier, so I'm not going to do a deep dive again. This is again going back to the idea of social reproduction theory, being that the nuclear family is the literal means of reproduction of capitalism. So when you have kids and you raise them with capitalist values, you are reproducing the capitalist system. In order to overthrow the capitalist system, they need to abolish the nuclear family.
Under the misogynistic capitalist family plan, most of this work is unpaid and falls on women, creating a sort of impossible deficit to overcome if you don't fit into their narrow capitalist framing of what a family is. Transphobic ideas rip families apart and often send trans people into the army of reserve labors, also known as unemployment. They are disproportionately burdened with job instability, poverty, and homelessness. It is in the best interest of all transgender people to fight for care that goes beyond mutual aid to improve their material conditions, threatening the hegemony of
They believe that trans people are extra oppressed by capitalism because capitalism does not allow trans people to get a job. And so what that means is that, and by the way, when they say trans in this context, they really mean queer. They're saying transform or transcend. They're not saying transition. But that's just a code switch you have to learn how to do in your head. But what they're saying is essentially capitalism doesn't allow us to get jobs. And so we have to exist outside of the capitalist system, which is extra oppressive. Nope, that's not individualist. That is a conservative interpretation. It is not. They are trying to assimilate to the collective. Getting rid of identity categories assimilates everyone to the collective.
Of the capitalist family model, by seizing their rights to healthcare, could embolden the rest of the working class. Ending the threat posed by family rejection could remove a critical method of hyper-exploitation that affects multiple sections of the working class.
How do you, pop quiz, how do you eliminate family rejection of trans and queer people? This person just said we need to eliminate family rejection, essentially, because family rejection pushes trans people to the margins. It forces them to work outside the system. They're extra oppressed because of it. They want to eliminate family reject. How do you do that? By queering the family, by creating a family of choice. If everyone is a comrade, everyone is in the family of choice, we are all part of the collective, then there is no rejection. People are only getting rejected when they're coming from the privatized nuclear family. They're rejected and pushed outside of the private nuclear family into other spheres. But if the private nuclear family doesn't exist, then everyone is part of the collective. Everyone is part of the group. There is no rejection. Does that make sense? As a question, how do they separate the trans that reinforce the gender binary? I already explained this to you. They do. This is not the same movement as people who reinforce the gender binary. When this person is saying trans, they mean transform or transcend. They do not mean transition. This is a code switch you have to learn how to do in your head. When queer Marxists or revolutionary communists are saying trans, they do not mean transition from man to woman or woman to man. They mean transform, as in transform the gender binary, or transcend, as in transcend the gender binary. So I understand that you're really trying to fit this into the conservative framework that you probably have, where these two ideas have been conflated, but they do not see it that way. So this is a conservative interpretation. You've got to get it through your head. Queer Marxists, revolutionary communists want to abolish the gender binary. Thanks for the super chat. What framework am I using to understand queer Marxism? The one that I created. Are they anti-capitalist anarchists? Yes. Or do we have to just memorize their ideology? Well, once you memorize a couple things about their ideology, the rest of it comes pretty easily. I highly recommend my Introduction to Queer Marxism lecture where I lay all this stuff out, and I have, again, that's free on YouTube. It's free on the Substack. You can find it there. But I've been studying this for years. I've been embedded in this subculture for years. I'm working on 2 different books about this subculture right now. That is the framework that I'm using. I'm using my framework that I have developed that is proprietary to me, that is based on primary source evidence that I've collected for years and years and years, that Republicans and conservatives have no fucking clue about because they refuse to look at it. Thanks for the super chat.
Since the 1960s, we've seen a decline in social movements and the rise of neoliberalism. This has given way to more conservative and complicit queer politics that have often abandoned trans people.
When they say conservative queer politics, what do they mean? This has given way to more conservative queer politics that abandons trans people. What does that mean? There's a very specific word I'm looking for. It starts with an A. The word I'm looking for starts with an A. Anyone who's watched my Introduction to Queer Marxism lecture should know the answer to this. It is the focal point of the Introduction to Queer Marxism lecture. God damn it. Fuck. Assimilationist! Yes, assimilationist. Conservative queer politics is assimilationist politics, as in assimilating to capitalism. Queer politics wants to abolish capitalism. Assimilating means, conservative queer politics means assimilating to capitalist values.
The struggle for trans rights has moved from the streets to the boardrooms of nonprofits, and we have little to show for our complicity. As revolutionary socialists, our duty is to oppose bigoted reactionaries and even the state itself, and dissuade others away from unrealistic visions of liberation through bourgeois reform. Instead, moving them towards solutions that build an independent and a fighting left. As Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without demand. Historically, our victories come through struggle. The ruling class will only offer concession when they think.
Hang on. I don't want to sound dumb when they say conservatives. What are they referring to? Those on the right, or they are referring to anyone who is not a communist. They are referring to Democrats. They are referring to liberals. They are referring to progressives. They're even, in this case, they're actually even still referring to the DSA. Anyone who is not a revolutionary communist is a conservative.
There is no other option. The struggle for Black trans lives in 2022 resulted in the conservative Supreme Court ruling that it is illegal to discriminate against workers for being transgender. A massive protest movement that is independent of both capitalist parties is able to stand, to fight, and win regardless of administration. Trans people make up a small fraction of the US population, but are natural allies with all workers who sell their labor to survive. We cannot corral.
No. There is one definition and one definition of capitalism only, and that is private property ownership. The left dictates the definition. You do not dictate the definition. Your whatever fucking ideas you have, I don't fucking care. That has nothing to do with what we're doing here. You basically just walked into a classroom and hijacked the entire fucking lesson around your fucking feelings. The definition of capitalism is private property ownership. Private property ownership means your ability to own a home. It means your ability to own a land. It means your ability to own an apartment rental. You rent as a landlord. Your ability to own intellectual property. Your ability to own a private business, whether that private business is big or small. And your parental rights over your children, because that allows you to pass private property down while keeping it privatized and out of the hands of the collective. This is also known as bourgeois property that allows you to create private personal wealth, that creates a hierarchy, that has some people having more stuff than other people. That is the only definition that matters. Your feelings do not fucking matter. Do not disrupt my class again.
Trans liberation into the tight restraints of the liberal bourgeois.
Hey, thanks Loki for becoming a member. I really appreciate it.
Instead, it should be built in solidarity with workers and other oppressed groups. Likewise, other factions of the working class should seek solidarity with transgender people. If the entire working class merely understood the struggle of their fellow workers, if we make the liberation of our neighbors our own business as well, we stand a chance to smash the system that oppresses us all. We should fight to win back emancipatory and anti-assimilationist gender politics,
anti-assimilation,
and strategize as a united front around demands that materially improve trans lives. This yields more reason.
How you know if someone is engaging in queer Marxism versus normie LGBTQ rights activism is if a person is an anti-capitalist. They are explicitly trying to overthrow capitalism. They are trying to abolish the gender binary. They are trying to abolish the nuclear family. Then they are a queer Marxist anti-assimilationist. If a person has a corporate job and has a marriage and has kids and has a house that they own, or maybe they have a business that they own, and they're still engaging in like the LGBTQ stuff, or they have a pride flag or something like that, they are an assimilationist. That is not the same as being a queer Marxist. Do people understand the difference? If someone is assimilating to the norms of capitalism, that means they believe that men and women are a biological reality. That means they believe in monogamous relationships. They have kids. They are raising kids with capitalist values. They are transitioning from being a man to a woman or a woman to a man. Those are assimilationist politics. It doesn't matter if someone's gay. It doesn't matter if they're straight. It doesn't matter if they're trans. It doesn't matter if they're not trans. If they are engaging in assimilationist politics, they are not queer Marxists. Okay? Queer Marxists are anti-assimilationist. Queer Marxists vehemently oppose gay marriage. Queer Marxists never wanted gay marriage to be legalized in the first place. Queer Marxists oppose gays in the military because they don't believe the military should exist. Queer Marxists do not believe that gender is a real thing. They believe gender is a social construct created by capitalism. Queer Marxists want to abolish the nuclear family because the nuclear family is the reproduction mechanism of capitalism. This is the distinction that matters. Is someone an assimilationist or an anti-assimilationist? No, there are no queers who are not Marxists. Queer is a far-left political ideology. The reason the Q is on the LGBT, and again, I explain this in my Introduction to Queer Marxism lecture, which you should really go watch because I'm not redoing the whole thing on this stream. The reason the Q is on there is it was put on there after gay marriage was legalized, when the queer Marxists started basically co-opting all of the normie LGBT institutions. So no, there are no queers, zero, who are not far left radical militants. Queer is a political ideology. Has nothing to do with being gay, has nothing to do with being trans.
Sources, more freedoms, and more inclusion makes us stronger as a whole. Though we must actively fight for the rights of queer people, we cannot find long-term victory.
Do the assimilationist LGBT understand that queer Marxists exist? Yes. But you have to understand that there really aren't that many normie gay rights activists anymore, because they all left the movement after gay marriage was legalized. The reason that non-binary exploded as a thing was because it happened after gay marriage, because all of the normie LGBT gay rights activists completely left activism because they won. So do they understand these people exist? Yes. It is conservatives who do not understand the difference between guys. Let me give you a good rule of thumb. If your question is, does the left understand this? The answer is always yes. It is the right who does not understand this. It is not the left who does not understand this. The left always understands. We use their videos of them literally explaining it. They are explaining it to each other. It is not the left that does not understand. It is the right that does not understand. So you think the left doesn't understand because you don't understand. No, this is an issue of conservatives and right-wingers not giving a fuck what the left is actually saying in the real world and not listening to them and just making shit up. So as long as you're listening to the left, like, understand that you're listening to a video of them literally explaining it.
Reform, gender and sexual oppression are rooted too deeply into these bourgeois systems. Queer liberation is not possible under capitalism. The beautiful,
queer liberation is not possible under capitalism because queer is a far left anti-capitalist political ideology.
Oppression are rooted too deeply into these bourgeois systems. Queer liberation is not possible under capitalism. The beautiful diversity that makes up workers around the world will only blossom to its fullest form under socialism, where people are free to grow and express themselves fully. To achieve liberation, we must build a militant movement of the exploited and the oppressed, with a unified goal of seizing political and economic power from the capitalists. It's a choice that we all must make between socialism or barbarism.
And what that person just described is the very basis of Queers for Palestine. Queers for Palestine is not chickens for KFC. Again, that's a retard conservative interpretation because they don't understand what this is. The whole idea of Queers for Palestine is the Palestinians are oppressed by capitalism. Israel are the capitalists. They're the settler colonists that stole the Palestinian land. So the Palestinians are oppressed by capitalism. Queer people are oppressed by capitalism. They're both oppressed by capitalism. They're both oppressed by the same thing. We are not free until everyone is free. We are not free until everyone is liberated from capitalism.
And our time is running out. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
All right, comrades, we're going to open up the discussion. If you'll message me if you'd like to join the stat.
And now they're moving into their discussion where people can just come off the mic and say whatever they want, basically. So you're going to see how this works in practice. This is how they run all their meetings. There's a lot of quiet pauses waiting for people to talk.
All right, I have Tyler from Denver on stat.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Tyler, he, him pronouns. Thanks to both of you for that presentation. That was amazing. I think that, again, it's really hit on, but, I know that we have some electioneers in here, and I think that it also just goes to show, too, that it's not just the big politicians, it's even at local levels and stuff, where Democrats, Republicans, all of these people that want to try to work within a system absolutely have failed the working.
Okay, I need to explain this. I had to explain this on Socialism Saturday. One of the things that happened in this conference, this was a presentation on day one of this conference, but before this presentation happened, there was a group of people at the conference who were basically shilling for a socialist candidate that's running in Seattle for, like, I think city council or something like that, or maybe some sort of Senate seat. I don't know. I forget. I know Average Person. I think Average Person had to leave, sadly, so he can't tell us. But there's a socialist candidate in Seattle running in an election. There were some people involved in the campaign that came to this conference, and they started talking about this socialist candidate that was running in an election. For people who don't understand, revolutionary communists and socialists are vehemently opposed to using what they call reformist politics. Reformist politics is like Zoran Mindami. It's the DSA. The DSA believes in reformism, running in elections, getting elected, making small incremental changes over time. Revolutionary communists and socialists do not support that at all, in any way. And so when these people came into this conference and started talking about their socialist candidate, they essentially pissed off everyone else at the conference, and there were multiple struggle sessions at the conference because the revolutionary communists were like, we do not believe in reformism, and how dare you take over our conference with this reformist politics. And so what you're hearing there when he's talking about the electioneers, he's basically complaining about the people that came in from Seattle that were trying to get someone elected. About the Palestine thing, if a nation is a form of categorization, how can they be in support of a specific nation? They're not in support of a specific nation. They are opposed to people who take land and privatize it. You misunderstood exactly what I said. What I said is Israel were the settler colonists that stole the indigenous land from the Palestinians. The Palestinians, in this case, were the indigenous people. They had the land under collective ownership. Israel came in, stole the land from them, and privatized it for their private use. They are not pro-Palestine in the sense that they're not pro a Palestinian nation. They are not pro any nation. They don't believe borders should exist. Borders are a form of capitalism, but they are anti-Israel because Israel is stealing land that previously belonged to the collective and then privatizing it and excluding people from using the land. That is what happened.
Pronouns. Thanks to both of you for that presentation. That was amazing. I think that, again, it's really hit on, but, I know that we have some electioneers in here, and I think that it also just goes to show, too, that it's not just the big politicians, it's even at local levels and stuff, where Democrats, Republicans, all of these people that want to try to work within a system absolutely have failed the working class entirety as an entirety. Like the concept of identity politics being very I get like very weak, very straw man, because like here in Denver, we have a gay mayor, but and so therefore he should be like the most liberal person and doing all of the things, but he's a billionaire tech or a millionaire tech bro who has the exact same interests as Peter Thiel and all of those people. So I think that, again, it's looking at the material like circumstances of like what a person's actually bringing to the table, right? The second that you go into reformist type of politics, as we've seen through Denver, you lose all your teeth. We had a comrade who went in who swore up and down they were a diehard abolitionist, had a lot of respect.
See, what they believe is, and the reason they're opposed to running in elections and the reason they're opposed, they were shit-talking Zoran Mandami and they were shit-talking the DSA the entire conference. He just said it. The reason we don't do reformist politics is because we believe, and they're talking about revolutionary communists, they believe that reformist politics basically forces people to assimilate to the capitalist model. So they believe that Zoran Mandami is a traitor. They've done entire presentations about this. The people you're watching right now never supported Zoran Mandami in New York because they literally believe that he is a traitor to their cause.
To the table, right? The second that you go into reformist type of politics, as we've seen through Denver, you lose all your teeth. We had a comrade who went in who swore up and down they were a diehard abolitionist, had a lot of respect for them. They went into electoral offices, and their spirits were broken because they knew that they couldn't do anything. And I think that also goes to show that, like, especially with Roe v. Wade and all of the whittling away of trans rights under Biden's administration and stuff like that, this is not a new Trump phenomenon. This is not a post-COVID phenomenon. Queer identity has always been under attack in this country. It has always been under attack under capitalism. I can't remember who said it because it's also a direct challenge to the family, which is a direct challenge to the reproduction of.
I gotta clip that. That's a great clip, actually. Queer identity has always been challenged in America because it is an attack on capitalism.
So it goes to show that, like, especially with Roe v. Wade and all of the whittling away of trans rights under Biden's administration and stuff like that, this is not a new Trump phenomenon. This is not a post-COVID phenomenon. Queer identity has.
Hang on. The run for governor wasn't real. That was fake. That wasn't even a real thing. So I don't know where you're coming up with that question or what your context is for that, but I was a name on a ballot. I agreed to be a name on a ballot and not really do anything. So that makes me very suspicious of how you even got here or why you're fucking here. So you can explain yourself in the chat, because anyone who actually follows my content knows that that wasn't actually a real thing. Hang on. There is no such thing as Trantifa. Trantifa is not real. I have to set this up to clip again.
And stuff like that. This is not a new Trump phenomenon. This is not a post-COVID phenomenon. Queer identity has always been under attack in this country. It has always been under attack under capitalism. I can't remember who said it, because it's also a direct challenge to the family, which is a direct challenge to the reproduction of capital through, social labor and everything. So Kat, I think, said, like, the time is now, organizing and being staunch in our defense for queer liberation and tying queer liberation to all other, aspects of liberation is a must. And when we can't shy away from that. So thank you.
Liberation means liberate from capitalism. So when he's saying liberation, you do follow Andy if you're using the term Trantifa. Sorry, not sorry. I don't even follow Andy No, except I'm using the term that Andy No explicitly made up and popularized, and the only people who use that term follow Andy No because Andy No made it up and then said it all over the media, and you just bought it without actually thinking critically about it. So, no, you absolutely do follow Andy No. Do you want to reformulate your question? Put on your big girl pants, ask a new question. Ask a new question. Formulate the whole question. This is something that people should have learned to do in elementary school, by the way, but because our school system sucks so badly, I now have to teach adults how to actually have adult conversations. Formulate a new question using proper language. Maybe with a period in front of it is not a formulation of a question. I'm waiting for you to formulate a new question using proper language. I do not understand the question that you are asking, so you need to ask a clearer question. Why was Antifa trying to protect Katie Wilson? I have no fucking idea. Do you have a clip of this? Do you actually know they were Antifa? They may not have been Antifa. You just may be deeply confused. Jonathan Cho doesn't always know the difference between Antifa and Democratic Socialists. So do you have a specific reference? Why do you think they were Antifa? Couldn't they have just been Democratic Socialists? Couldn't they have been reformists? We don't know. That actually wasn't the question that I asked you. I said, how do you know they were Antifa? The answer to how do you know they were Antifa is not Jonathan Cho has a video of it on YouTube. I'm not going to stop everything we're doing to go watch Jonathan Cho's video on YouTube. We are actually in the middle of something. Were they in black? Okay, I'm not. You need to learn how to speak in complete sentences because I'm not doing this anymore. This is deeply disruptive to the fucking class. It's not even on topic, and you're not speaking in complete sentences. So if you want me to take the time to answer a question, formulate it like a fucking adult in a complete sentence. Yeah, we were doing so well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. We have Riley next on stack.
All right, comrades. Thank you so much, Kat.
All right, let's be clear. You don't tell me what to fucking do. If I want to address someone in my fucking chat, I will do it, and you can shut the fuck up and listen, or you can go. This is my fucking classroom. This is not your fucking classroom. I am not looking for advice on how to run my classroom. If I have to train people from the beginning how to ask questions and how to actually formulate a question in a complete fucking sentence in order to bring order to this thing that I am doing, then I will do that. If you don't like it, I don't fucking care. If you don't want to be in my classroom, get the fuck out. My God. Thank you, two ladies. Dear Karlyn, we love your work. Here's my donation to keep your spirits up with those who really need to learn. Yeah, well, we're going back to basics, and we're working on the formulation of complete sentences at this point and how to ask a question. My God, the things I have to teach people because they don't actually know how to do them. So Nick went and saw the Jonathan Cho video and says they weren't Antifa, they were DSA. Exactly like I thought. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Awesome presentation. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about my experience as a trans person and as a socialist.
Nick, were they in Black Bloc? Were they in Black Bloc or were they not in Black Bloc? Were they in Black Bloc or not? Waiting for the answer. No, they were not in Black Bloc. So when the annoying woman said so when you said they were in Black Bloc, you literally made that up. You literally made that up. Okay, you're not talking for the rest of the stream. No more talking from you. Making shit up does not go over well in my chat. I'll tell you that.
For that awesome presentation. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about my experience as a trans person and as a socialist. You know, I'm always seeing these Democratic candidates trying to get my vote, and I'm not really seeing them ever actually put in the work to earn it. And at this point,
gotta clip it. I'm a trans person and a socialist, and I'm not voting for the Democrats because they're not actually earning my vote.
All right, comrades. Thank you so much, Kat, for that awesome presentation. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about my experience as a trans person and as a socialist. You know, I'm always seeing these Democratic candidates trying to get my vote, and I'm not really seeing them ever actually put in the work to earn it. And at this point, I'm convinced that they either can't or refuse to. And as such, I've come to the conclusion that if we are going to be voting for people, you know, obviously that's a personal decision. We're not going to tell you who not to vote, like whether or not you should vote. But in my mind, nobody will deserve my vote unless they're like unequivocally, you know, going to be going in there with the intent of making the conditions easier for us as revolutionaries. Like, it can be a tool in the toolbox, maybe, if that's how you want to think about it. But the system will not save us. You can't the master's tools will not break down the master's house, right? And so again, we can have, you know, people in office that potentially, you know, on paper could make conditions easier for us, but they're not going to pull us out. They're not going to save us. Doesn't matter if we have, you know, the gayest, most queer person as the president. It won't fucking matter, you know, because at the end of the day, the entire system is just entirely cooked from the inside from the jump. And so we can, again, you know, vote for whoever, but at the end of the day, you know, it's not something I'm going to be pushing for. You know, I'll talk about how Zoran has done, has made socialism, even if it's democratic socialism, has made the concept of socialism a lot more widespread and a lot more popular, and has, you know, basically won in New York, which I think is a win for our movement as a whole, but not necessarily, you know, an immediate gain for us as a movement. You know, it's more like a passive gain than anything. Kind of similar to how I see Bernie. You know.
Thank you, comrade.
All right, that was a great clip. Great clip. Hang on, I'm just save it. Cool. Lots of good clips today so far. Let's keep going.
Right. Next, I have Logan on stack, followed by Angela.
Hi, comrades. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think as revolutionary socialists, we need to talk about the like existence is resistance, or like trans joy is resistance, kind of petty bourgeois movements. I think they are actively harmful to our movement as revolutionaries. I think like, so in Seattle, we just had the situation where this Christo-fascist asshole John Floyd came to do his like Let Us Worship concert at Gasworks Park in Seattle, and he was originally scheduled to do it in Cal Anderson, which, if you don't know, Seattle is sort of the neighborhood. And so after finally agreeing to move his permit to Gasworks Park, so many of the organizations that would normally
Jason, I
come up
appreciate
and show
that.
up to protest him sort of fell off, decided it's not worth our time, and then other organizers, like petty bourgeois organizers, had basically a tea for tea mutual aid picnic there at Cal Anderson, and we're even talking about taking it inside in case fascists show up. And that draws a lot of attention away from the direct action of actually showing up to protest these guys and drown them out and humiliate them, that we should actually be focusing on. And I think that it is time that we call them out directly and not be polite and kind to them, because they are our class enemies, and this is hurting our movement. And yeah, we should talk about it more. Thanks.
Comrade Angela.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. So I will be very brief because I wanted to talk about a kind of, I could say, technical question about our intervention in the trans movement. Actually, in general,
Hang on, got a question here. They say the system has to facilitate their revolution. No, that's not what they said. No. The system is capitalism. They did not, bro, you have to make part of the reason you don't understand the left is because you are not being accurate in your characterization. There is no universe in which in this presentation they have said the system has to facilitate their revolution in order to gain their vote. That is not what was said. That is your misunderstanding of what is going on, because instead of asking questions, you think you fucking know everything and you're not listening to what is being said. The system is capitalism. When they say the system, they mean capitalism. They do not believe there is any reality in which capitalism will facilitate their revolution, because their revolution is the opposite of capitalism. They don't vote because the two parties and the government and the Constitution uphold the capitalist system. They do not believe in the courts. The reason you're saying that is because you are skewing this with a bullshit conservative interpretation, because you think the courts are funded by Soros and therefore always on their side and blah, blah, blah. But that has nothing to do with this. You just made it up. So every party, thank you for the money. I appreciate the money. Every single thing that you wrote is wrong. And you are going to understand a lot more about the left when you start being more accurate in what you're saying. And if you don't have the information to be accurate, then you need to, instead of making statements, ask a question. Because this is not a question. This is a statement. And then you have based the question that you asked on the incorrect statement that you made. So again, I told you this already, but I will tell you again, you need to unlearn everything you think you know, because you obviously don't know what you're talking about. You've obviously been listening to too much conservative media. They have lied to you. It's not your fault that they lied to you, but now that you know that they have lied to you, you need to unlearn everything you think you know. So stop assuming that you know anything.
Movement that treats specific oppressions like racial oppression, queer oppression, female oppression, and even national oppressions. So the question of kind of intersectionality in the sense of seeing an individual, for example, a worker, a black worker, and seeing him as 2 times oppressed because he is a worker and black. What I'm saying is, yes, he is 2 times oppressed, but I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think that it is useful in our propaganda to actually underline this kind of difference between a white worker and a black worker, or it is counterproductive because it tends to divide even more the working class in a certain sense for our propaganda? Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, comrade. I have I'm going to list off a couple names. I have Phil, and then I have a question from Atharva, and then Bill Muller.
Awesome. Thanks, Reagan.
Thank you very much, Aoife. Thank you to Alejandra and Comrade Kat for their incredible kickoffs. It has been expressed to me in the past that the sort of corporate acceptance of the pride helped create a sort of welcoming space for young.
Hang on. I'm just going to clip this. Because Reagan mentioned it, so I know it needs to get clipped.
Kickoffs. It has been expressed to me in the past that the sort of corporate acceptance of the pride helped create a sort of welcoming space for young queer people and new queer people. Guys, could you keep it down, please? Guys, could you keep it down, please? Thank you. Sorry, we got many people in the room here. And you know, maybe that really does mean something for a young, like, you know, 13-year-old gay kid who's just, you know, come to realize their sexuality, to be able to go into Claire's and buy a pair of rainbow earrings for the first time, or a little pendant that they can wear underneath their t-shirt while they attend Catholic school. Maybe that is a good thing. But here's what I need everybody to understand, and I think most people here do understand. Countless Pride celebrations across the US this year experienced severe budget shortfalls because of numerous corporate sponsors pulling their support. The political climate has shifted. These companies never would have given money to Pride unless they thought they could have made money off of consumers from the LGBT community. They don't fucking care about identity. They don't fucking care about struggle. They don't fucking care about us. They care about money. They're capitalists. They are not our allies in any meaningful sense of the word, or any sense of the word. I don't even know why I qualified that with meaningful. They will not save us. They are not our saviors. And that is why I am so glad the messaging has been strong in some socialist circles to reject the corporate takeover of Pride, to express the message of no police at Pride, because these forces are counter to the struggle of queer liberation. They will not save us, and this year has shown that as clearly as it could possibly have been in recent years. They only blow where the wind blows. They're not. Yeah. They should be resisted just as well as we resist Amazon or Walmart or any other corporate entity, as well as, you know, the Democrats and Republicans that they also support.
All right, that was a pretty great clip. We're going to go back and listen to that again. I'm going to break it down. No, he was being colloquial. Socialists are colloquial too, guys. Listen, I promise you, if you guys stop following and listening to bullshit con artist conservative media, you will stop using these stupid debunks. He used gendered language. They actually don't give a fuck about this stuff. That's a conservative owning the libs talking point, that they clip things out of context that make good rage bait on Twitter, and then you guys watch them because you follow stupid conservative con artists, and then you start to believe that that is what the real far left is like, when in fact you've literally just been fooled by conservative con artists who are using you for money. They have no problem using gendered language. They want to abolish the categories. They have no problem saying you guys. And the only reason you would think that is if you saw enough conservative clickbait to think that everyone freaks out every single time someone uses gendered language, which they don't. Literally zero. So stop listening to conservative media. You'll be a lot smarter. Just look at primary sources. That's it. Literally zero conservative media understands this.
Word. I don't even know why I qualified. They can wear underneath their t-shirt while they attend Catholic school. Maybe that is a good thing, but here's what I need everybody to understand, and I think most people here do understand. Countless Pride celebrations across the US this year experienced severe budget shortfalls because of numerous corporate sponsors pulling their support. The political climate has shifted. These companies never would have given money to Pride unless they thought they could have made money off of consumers from the LGBT community.
This is called rainbow capitalism. Essentially, the idea of rainbow capitalism is that companies who sponsor things like pride parades are only doing it to make money because gay people then go and spend money in their businesses. So it is still a form of capitalism. It is still advancing capitalist interests. Revolutionaries, excuse me, hang on. Revolutionary socialists and communists and queer Marxists do not support pride as a general rule. In fact, a lot of them will have separate, like if there's a giant pride parade, they might participate in it, they might go to it, but like in general, queer Marxist stuff is actually done separately from the pride parade. So what they'll do is they'll schedule their queer Marxism schedule. No, 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 shut the fuck up. No. Newsmax is not a good source for this information. There are 0 conservative sources that are good for this information. Listen. Generally, what the far left will do is they will schedule simultaneous events, like coordinating around the Pride schedule, but they don't actually support the main thing because they believe it's too corporate. They believe it advances capitalist interests, etc., etc.
They don't fucking care about identity. They don't fucking care about struggle. They don't fucking care about us. They care about money. They're capitalists.
They're capitalists.
They are not our allies in any meaningful sense of the word, or any sense of the word. I don't even know why I qualified that with meaningful. They will not save us. They are not our saviors, and that is why I am so glad the messaging has been strong in some socialist circles to reject the corporate takeover of pride, to express the message of no police at pride.
No police at pride. What does that mean? Why is he like, there shouldn't be any police at a pride festival? Why? What does that have to do with anything? Because socialists and communists want to abolish the police. Police are the manifestation of capitalism. Police are the protectors of private property. They're the defenders of capitalism. So they don't want police at any of their stuff, up to and including Pride, because they think that Pride is too corporate. And one of the manifestations of Pride being too corporate and supporting capitalist endeavor is the fact that the police show up at Pride.
Because these forces are counter to the struggle of queer liberation. They will not save us, and this year has shown that as clearly as it could possibly have been in recent years. They only blow where the wind blows. They're not. They're. Yeah. They should be resisted just as well as we resist Amazon or Walmart or any other corporate entity. As well as, the Democrats and Republicans that they also support.
And a dig at the Democrats at the very end.
Thank you, Comrade Phil. We are moving on to Thorva.
Yeah, hey all. First of all, I just want to thank the speakers. Really, really great talks all around.
And I just want to note, I just want to note in general, do you guys notice how many men there are in this? There are almost no women involved in this conference. So for everyone who thinks that all of this stuff is pushed by women, the vast, 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 vast majority of people at this conference are men. And the vast majority of them are white.
That I've been just having too is just the idea that just the concept of identity politics in general, right, are always a tool for like liberal politicians to, in some way, shape, or form.
Gotta clip it. Identity politics are always a tool for liberal politicians because queer Marxists and revolutionary communists do not support identity politics. They are anti-identity politics.
Yeah, hey all. first of all, I just want to thank the speakers. Really, really great talks all around. I guess a thought that I was just having too is just the idea that just the concept of identity politics in general, right, are always a tool for like liberal politicians to, in some way, shape, or form, co-opt into like in whatever way is convenient. I think this is kind of like kind of parallel to like what Phil was saying with how these major corporations, for example, might co-opt Pride, for example, because it is just materially beneficial to them, right? It's good optics. They'll put in resources into that, but there's no actual solidarity, right? There's no material, like actual basis behind that solidarity. It is purely being co-opted. So I was thinking too, like maybe like the misogyny that we saw throughout the 20th century could be argued. You could argue that that was just like part to preserve like the nuclear family and isolation of people. And then even when like the women's liberation movement happened, we saw that that in some ways like may have supported the decrease of wage, because if in the traditional like cis het household both partners are making money, then you can pay a household, like each individual less money and still have like one household, right? And the takeaway here isn't that we shouldn't like obviously support like liberate, like, you know, general like liberation of people, like of oppressed entities. I think obviously the issue is that I think there should be more of this a material consciousness driving it. So I guess kind of my question in general is one of like, what does it even mean to, if like I think the liberal mindset is to co-opt any gains that are made, is it possible to even like have a like a liberating movement that isn't automatically co-opted? And is there like any ideas of how we can organize in a way that that maybe mitigates or like helps, takes into account the inevitable co-opting or movement away, or like this focus on identity politics by liberal politicians that kind of hijacks the movement as a whole? I'm just kind of curious about keeping the material sanctity of a movement, I guess, without bogging it down in a way that like allows for these liberals to come in and co-opt the entire movement.
Thank you.
All right. Let me grab that clip. You guys will notice they don't answer the questions when they're asked. It's not that they're not going to answer the questions. It's just that they have all their statements and comments first. And then what happens is, so this isn't a traditional Q&A like people typically think of a Q&A at a conference, where someone goes up to the microphone and asks a question and then the presenters answer that question. What happens is, again, you guys are seeing it, like everyone can go up to the microphone and say whatever they want for like 2 minutes. And sometimes they just make statements, or they pontificate, or they ask a question. But even if they ask a question, it's not answered at the moment because they're going through the list and giving everyone the opportunity to speak. But at the end, what's going to happen is they're going to give the speakers a chance to answer any questions that were asked, or offer any like closing thoughts or things like that. So they're not going to answer his question, but they, at least not right now, but you might see them answer it later, and it just kind of depends. Yeah, and I will say that was a stupid fucking question. Queer is a political ideology. It has nothing to do with being a beta or gamma or any other fucking made up Brave New World word. It is a political ideology. It is a far left, anti-assimilationist, anti-capitalist political ideology. And people in the chat tried to tell you, and you know, should have listened. But I guess you did. You're thanking Nick, so that's good. But it was a dumb question.
Comrade. Next I have Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine.
May I get stuck? Sorry.
Shoot me a DM, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine and Alejandro, for those great presentations. Mine is just the question that you've made me think about, which is, you know, one of the things that the right does and the nation does is kind of harness bad gender ideas to things like militarism and imperialism, right? So, for example, the fetishization of like the white male body by the military now, the kind of imposition of heteronormativity that you really see like Hegseth going after in policing gender and sexuality within the military, for example. And the other example might be what people sometimes call imperial feminism, right? Which is like justifying wars, U.S. imperialism in the Middle East, saving women from Islam, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we mobilize our trans and queer gender politics in an anti-imperialist direction, do you think? Like, how can we talk to folks about that, not just pointing out what they're doing, but actually talking about how we as revolutionary socialists see the conjunctures?
All right. I'm going to have Comrade Federico, Comrade Jude, and then Comrade Janine.
June can go before me.
Okay. Comrade Jude?
Hi, all. Can you hear me? Can you all hear it?
Oh, tranny voice.
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. I just well, thank y'all for your talks. They were excellent, and thank everyone for your comments and questions. It's really cool to have this discussion. One thing that Catherine said that kind of struck me was the whole rhetoric around protecting women and children, and you think incorporating these policies to nominally protect them. And something that Alex mentioned as well. These policies directly harm women and children, like the economic policies directly harm women and children. And I think a lot of it is also, Alex talks about Elon Musk and all that with the underpopulation or whatever. I think some of that's
that's right,
tied
Quentin.
to white supremacy in a way, because it's not they're not concerned about just the population in general. It's very particular segments of the population. And this is maybe not exactly related to that, but what I believe Steve or Steven mentioned about the corporations, they're just following whatever social trend they think will profit them the most. I think of that Sydney Sweeney ad. I don't know if y'all have seen that, where it's like she has good genes, and to me, it's just really alarming, this trend, and how I think it's all connected, transphobia and sexism, and I think it's deeply tied to racism and white supremacy.
Thank you, Comrade. Fede?
Sure. I think a lot of this talk has shifted from gender to general the general discussion of politics and how to interact from revolutionary politics, in competition with the more dominant reformist politics in the left in general. And I think there's I don't hear a lot of debate. I almost hear like we're preaching to the choir in this event, in this talk itself, in one part of it, which is having clear politics in terms of all kinds of oppression, all struggles for all kinds of oppression do not have a future if it's not with a revolutionary strategy and against capitalism, and thus
That's a great clip. Gotta get it. I normally don't like this guy because he's international and he has an accent. He's kind of hard to understand, but that was actually a really good clip. No oppressed people have a shot unless we overthrow capitalism. Again, this is the basis of Queers for Palestine.
Gender to general
sexism, and I think it's deeply tied to racism and white supremacy.
Thank you, Comrade. Fede?
Sure. I think a lot of this talk has shifted from gender to general the general discussion of politics and how to interact from revolutionary politics, in competition with the more dominant reformist politics in the left in general. And I think there's I don't hear a lot of debate. I almost hear like we're preaching to the choir in this event, in this talk itself, in one part of it, which is having clear politics in terms of all kinds of oppression, all struggles for all kinds of oppression do not have a future if it's not with a revolutionary strategy and against capitalism, and thus the political organizations that try to take movements in that direction and co-opting them have to be beaten. We need revolutionary socialist politics to win against reformist politics. But I think having and expressing those clear politics is one half of the question, because then the other half is how do you carry out that struggle against a stronger competitor? Because most of the people that are radicalizing today, which are many, they go through reformist ideas first, and sometimes antagonizing and clashing is a way to win some people in that debate. Many times it's not. Many times it's different ways. Many times it's against showing we are more consistent and better fighters against the right than they are, who are actual, end up showing how they betray along the way. And a lot of it is figuring out what is the best way to win that battle. I mean, just for example, Mamdani. One thing is if Mamdani wins, takes office, starts doing shit wrong, and really pointing things out will open a lot of eyes, and we can be a part of the discussion. It will be an entirely different situation if Mamdani is prevented from taking office, for example, which I don't think we should rule out. If Trump steps in and does something to, like Erdogan does with the mayors of the Kurdish mayors, and doesn't let them take office and that kind of thing, all of a sudden we have to be the best fighters defending Mamdani and defending Mamdani take office, defending democracy and showing how the Democrats are the ones who are not the good fighters for democracy, the only way to, etc. In general, it's the debate against fascism in the 30s was a lot about this. How do we, many times it's confronting, many times it's showing that we're better fighters than them. And I just wanted to throw this in because I hear a lot of it going in one direction, and I think it only gets half of the best revolutionary politics right. I think this other half is missing. Antagonizing, sometimes it's something else.
Okay. Good clip. Tons of good clips in this presentation. I knew this conference was going to be really good to make clips to just like teach people basics about the left, and so that's really the most useful part of this exercise.
Thank you, comrade. I have Janine. Stack is now closed. I have quite a backlog.
Hi there. I just wanted my contribution is more centered around the term identity politics being thrown around, and I just want to show some caution around using it. And I understand why some people are saying liberal identity politics, and there is a way why that is weaponized and is used in a very watered down way, but we need to be careful about it, because I feel like there's a very good use in that concept, and when it's used in a very like revolutionary context or framework, especially in a Marxist framework, because the concept was, or rather, the idea of it was coined by Black women, right? And then it was then solidified by a Black feminist lesbian collective.
They do not believe the DSA furthers their revolution. The DSA are reformists. They are revolutionaries. Revolutionaries do not believe that reformists like the DSA are going to lead to their revolution. They're saying that essentially their position is like, Yeah, I guess it's kind of okay that Mandami won, like, whatever, but they don't think Mandami is their guy. A lot of them think Mandami is a traitor. They don't like the DSA. They don't work with the DSA. They had entire struggle sessions at this conference about the DSA. So again, you guys need to listen. Revolutionaries do not support reformers like the DSA. That's what they're saying. For your time in class, dudes, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
In the 1970s by the Combahee Collective in the East Coast. So, and they were also socialist, organizers. So we need to be careful, like, just to like throw it out, that concept around irresponsibly, because it is of good use. And I feel like if we use the concept in conjunction with the Marxist framework, we can definitely bring in a lot more people into queer people into our movement to make sense again, and like just as the presenters have done, to our ranks as being socialist cadre, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, comrade. I'm going to have Julia next, followed by Kim, and then John K.
Hi there, comrades. I wanted to, the Italian comrade, an Italian comrade asked the question about, I don't know if I fully understood the question. I didn't, but asked a question about whether we should, talk about workers, like call out people's oppression, talking about Black workers or women workers or that kind of thing, when we're talking about liberation. And I want to say wholeheartedly yes, in the sense that that revolutionaries need to be the best fighters against oppression. Oppression, it can't just kind of be lumped in and forgotten. And too often there in practice in our organizations, there's been way too many ways where we've kind of acted as if this sounds kind of reductionist, I guess, but but it really, I mean, so many of us have had the experience. I was in the ISO, not to get into that too much, but an organization that was split apart by
a sex scandal.
A crisis about the handling of sexual assault, treatment of women and people of color, and real harm that was endured over many years, right? And so it's super important to be genuine parts of the struggles for liberation. Not to say that, I mean, we all are here, but I wanted to give a couple of examples as quickly as I can about things that I'm involved in. As I'm a worker at the County of Sonoma. I'm a member of the union SCIU. I'm part of a group fighting, a couple of different groups fighting in the Palestine Solidarity Movement, that as workers and around immigrant rights. And all of those are some projects we've been involved in that they're consciously intersectional. And we make a point about the intersectionality of our movements in terms of we've established a sibling relationship with a union in the West Bank, the Palestine New Federation of Trade Unions, and the women's circle of that group. We held a big fundraiser and had them speak about the condition of women in Palestine and make its relationships with workers in the U.S. Similarly, in the BDS movement, and this is just my last point, a boycott of General Dynamics that exists in our county here, making bomb parts, and their attacks on sorry, just last thought, on not just the weapons angle, but the families, they're involved in family separation and surveillance, and they're also, there's all sorts of like pink washing that goes on with that organization. So there's so much possibility to demonstrate the intersections of our struggles, and that's an important way that we can bring people into our movements. Thanks.
Thank you. Comrade Kim?
Yeah, I just wanted to also say something about the, workers as workers and workers as oppressed minorities, and whether or not it is deleterious.
Hang on. Kitty Punches over on Rumble says I'm a paid subscriber on YouTube and my posts and chat aren't showing up. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you, Kitty. I don't know what to tell you. Did you say something to get banned? I don't know what to say.
For us to bring up and fight for and engage wholeheartedly in the fight against racism and sexism and homophobia, and I would go way beyond, and transphobia and ageism and people who are disabled. These are all oppressed, doubly oppressed, triply oppressed, quadruply oppressed members of the working class. And it is actually engaging in all of those people's struggles and bringing those people's struggles together, and being there as revolutionary socialists, making sure that we are clear that we stand with every oppressed minority to do and live in the way that they choose to live. I think that's just really absolutely critical, and that's who we are. And that's, what Lenin called the socialists as the tribune of the oppressed. And frankly, until we do that, we will not have the kind of solidarity that we need in order to even begin to form a revolutionary organization, revolutionary party, or carry out a successful revolution.
Thank you, Kim. John Kay?
Hi, comrade. Yeah, I wasn't really going to intervene in discussion at all.
If you were walking down the street and you passed this guy on the street, you would think he was a conservative. I just want to point that out. You cannot judge people's politics based on how they look. It's stupid to even try.
I was listening and everything, but the question about whether we emphasize differences got my attention, and I think it's important. And I could just say, well, ditto what Kim and Julia just said, and and they certainly said a lot of what I could have said, and I agree. With these differences in the class exist, right? And I think defaulting to class reductionism, which is a problem, I know when the reformist left, is not the option we should pursue, because I think we, as Kim said, it's like Lenin said, "What is to be done?" The Communist Party is a tribute to the people, and we take up the struggles of all oppressed peoples, regardless, right? I would point out too, in terms of the Black struggle, and just I don't want to take this detour very far, but James wrote, the Revolutionary Answer in like 47 or 48, I think it was, that the Black struggle has its own dynamic, and I think I would argue that the struggles of oppressed people, queer people, trans people, oppressed nationalities, etc., can have a big influence on the class struggle itself, right? So. Yeah, I think that's important, and I'll finish up with this. As our experience in Workers' Voice, that our Teamster comrades, we have a lot. Probably outside of teachers' unions, our biggest union concentration is in the Teamsters Union, which, as folks know, has a reactionary leadership that is tailing after Trump. John O'Brien is a complete scumbag. But what our comrades have managed to do in their workplace is they've essentially taken, reinvigorated the union's Pride Caucus
Oh yeah.
in their local, and actually lead it. And it's also given them the opening to talk about other issues like Palestine, etc., with coworkers through this using the Pride Caucus.
Hang on. Gotta clip this about the union specifically.
And our biggest union concentration. Yeah, I think that's important. And I'll finish up with this, as our experience in Workers' Voice, our Teamster comrades, we have a lot, probably outside of teachers unions, our biggest union concentration is in the Teamsters union, which, as folks know, has a reactionary leadership that is tailing after Trump. John O'Brien is a complete scumbag. But what our comrades have managed to do in their workplace is they've essentially taken, reinvigorated the union's Pride Caucus in their local, and actually lead it. And it's also given them the opening to talk about other issues like Palestine, etc., with coworkers through this using the Pride Caucus sort of as a cover, if you will. And I mean, our comrades have faced some real red baiting from the Teamster leadership, including TDU people, which is a real disappointment. All right, I'll stop there.
Good quote. Good quote. The Teamsters, beyond the teachers' unions, are our biggest union. And the Republicans invited the Teamsters to keynote night one of the RNC because they are stupid.
Thank you, John. Our final two speakers from the floor will be Michael and then Jason. Please be economical with your words. Thank you, comrades.
I will try to be very quick. I just want mine is mainly just an appreciation for the two presenters. If I was to be vulnerable and honest, this is probably the issue that I have had to have the most personal evolution on as a revolutionary. So I really appreciated the presentation on how to understand the issue from a more revolutionary perspective. I think sometimes I can fall back into a kind of liberal equity argument on this issue. And so, especially Catherine's presentation and Alejandra's, I thought the real material basis for this and to have a more radical analysis was super helpful. For me, it's also been an area where my students have helped me the most in my personal evolution. I mean, most of us that grew up in the working class have, vestiges of sexism and homophobia and transphobia that we have to fight against. And so, one of the things, it hasn't been said yet, but I think it's important to say, just to be a revolutionary is to also be a good listener to oppressed people and to not always lead, but to follow and to learn. So there's an example where a teacher can learn as much from the students. If you're following the national news on this issue of trans athletes, like my college that I teach, I'm a community college teacher in the North Bay.
Oh yeah?
Community one of the college students was just outed by a teammate and a right-wing sort of MAGA publication called Outkick. Sort of published it, and then it was taken up by a whole bunch of different social media trolls. So it's become an enormous issue. And the socialist culture I come from teaches me one of the things I need to do is unite various different struggles. We've had a vibrant immigrant rights movement in my district, particularly in anticipation of ICE raids in agricultural areas. I live in a wine growing region. So uniting those two struggles has been something that I've been trying to do in this last week, and it has I think produced some interesting intersectional solidarity across regions of the campus that don't necessarily find common cause, and I'd be curious on what other people said about that. Thank you very much.
All right, Jason, if you can finish it off for us.
Great stuff, y'all. Jason, Firebrand, Denver. Catherine, you mentioned that the conservative Supreme Court, or a conservative Supreme Court made a ruling that it was illegal to discriminate against workers for being transgender, and you tied that to the Black Lives Matter movement taking up the cause of Black trans lives in 2020. So I just wanted to point out that something from an earlier comment from an earlier session, that a protest movement won that, not a campaign for a Supreme Court justice. I don't think, I couldn't bring myself to just let that comment pass. We should never campaign for judges. That's a violation of class independence and our position against the repressive apparatus of the state. It's the same as campaigning for a cop or a district attorney.
Revolutionary communists want to abolish all courts. They do not believe that judges and courts should exist as they currently do.
Our goals matter, obviously, but our means matter also. The right means.
Actually, let me get a clip of that. Let me get a clip of that. That's like something that they don't talk about that directly that often.
Catherine, you mentioned that the conservative Supreme Court, or a conservative Supreme Court made a ruling that it was illegal to discriminate against workers for being transgender, and you tied that to the Black Lives Matter movement taking up the cause of Black trans lives in 2020. So I just wanted to point out that something from an earlier comment from an earlier session, that a protest movement won that, not a campaign for a Supreme Court justice. I don't think, I couldn't bring myself to just let that comment pass. We should never campaign for judges. That's a violation of class independence and our position against the repressive apparatus of the state. It's the same as campaigning for a cop or a district attorney. Our goals matter, obviously, but our means matter also. The right means, proletarian means, strikes and protests, leave us stronger whether we win or lose in our immediate fight. The wrong ones leave us confused and dependent on our enemies. I understand this can be a tricky question for some people, or these questions can be tricky. A struggle has developed here around the murder of a trans woman who she was.
Got the clip of the judges. All right, let's see. BLM state they're trained Marxist self-avowed. Well, yeah, but that honestly, like in the grand scheme of things, BLM has already been ushered out basically of the. Have you heard from BLM lately? There's a reason for that. Daryl over on Rumble asked, why don't socialists ever move to communist countries? Because they want communism in the United States. They believe communism needs to be global. They're not going to move to communist countries. They don't believe countries should exist.
Her case was disregarded. Her family has been disrespected. There's been transphobia expressed that seems to be like poisoning the investigation. It's really terrible. And we're fully supportive of the struggle against this
he was
treatment,
just referencing 2020.
There is a central demand that it has raised, or that the people in this movement have raised, and it's for independent police oversight. Now, this is, we can be fully supportive of that struggle, but we can't.
You guys understand that owning BLM for the 8 millionth time isn't actually going to stop far left organizing, right? You guys understand that pointing out that BLM are scammers, like BLM, the organization, are scammers, isn't actually going to stop the far left. You guys understand that calling them hypocrites isn't actually going to change anything, right?
Really endorse that demand. We consider it to be illusion breeding. The police will never be overseen by anyone but the bosses, and they're and when such bodies come about, they tend to rehabilitate the image of the police without changing them. They reconcile the community to their reign. So anyway, we need to be where the movement is. We need to be where the fights against oppression and exploitation are. But we have to conduct ourselves carefully and in those movements. So thanks, comrades.
All right, thank you, Comrade Jason. We'll be going back to Alejandra.
Now they're going back to the original speakers to get them to respond.
Thank y'all for
One
this
more time before
discussion.
they end.
I think it's really interesting. I think we all brought up really good points. I'm trying to have some fun closing remarks, but I think mostly from this discussion is rainbow capitalism is not going to save us, as we've seen. These are all, we don't want to say doubly oppressed, I guess unique or different unique oppressions that are being experienced, and pointing them out and, like as mentioned, using it as a framework, especially with a Marxist framework, is important, because otherwise it's almost kind of denying how insidious capitalism can be when it's intertwined so deeply with things like racism and transphobia and homophobia. I think too, it's important to not focus just on those like identities as well. I'm thinking about this past summer with, no pride during genocide, or a lot of these pride organizations and events were refusing to even touch Palestine and all these things. And it's the main thing is realizing that all these different struggles are interlinked and they all have to be achieved through a revolutionary framework, because if not, that it won't happen. It's not going to happen for capitalism the way that it is. But yeah, thank you all so much, and thanks for the great discussion.
Thank you, Comrade. Comrade Catherine.
Thank you all. Great discussion tonight. Of course, from all the sessions, it's been awesome tagging along with this. Of course, appreciate everyone who stuck around to hear me speak. I can't stress enough like how important it is to stand in solidarity, not only with trans people, but with other marginalized groups. There are a lot of people out there that will advocate for just trying to make, to take battles for like workers' rights in general, just this very broad over thing. But it's like, well, workers' rights really don't help people that can't find a job. And if people are being discriminated against and they're not getting hired, like workers' rights are not going to really help them in that situation. So that's why we have to advocate specifically for marginalized groups, because they have concerns that are very unique to their material realities. Just thank you all for being here.
That's it. We made it. Congrats, guys. You made it through the entire presentation. Was this a useful exercise for people? 1 in the chat if you found this to be a useful exercise. 2 in the chat if you found this to not be a useful exercise. Because I'm kind of thinking we should just go back and watch a lot of the presentations from this conference. There's so many good things from this conference. I got so many clips. This was a useful exercise? Cool. All right. Well, we'll continue with this tomorrow then. We'll watch another thing. And we watched one from Socialism Saturday this past week too. So we'll just continue watching presentations from this conference. It's helpful for me to be able to go back and clip them like this, to be able to listen to them again. Because obviously, like during the conference, I was recording this live, right? So I couldn't stop to break down what they were saying when I originally recorded it. And so maybe we'll just keep doing this. Maybe we'll keep doing this. Maybe that is the plan for the rest of the week, at least until Friday, because I'm not going to be here on Friday because I got something else I got to go do. So that might be what we do. All right, guys, that is all we have for right now. Now we will be doing Disenraged tonight, so I'm going to go take a little bit of a break. We will be back at approximately, what time does Disenraged start? 9 p.m. tonight. I think Jennifer wants to watch something about Zoroastrianism, so that'll be cool because I don't really know that much about that. So that'll be good educational content for me. So that's what we're going to be doing. As a reminder, If you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, head over to the Substack. That is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year. I really do appreciate everyone who supports my work on Substack. I appreciate everyone who sent in a super chat, be it on YouTube or Rumble. Thank you guys for allowing me to do what I do. And now I'm going to go take a break, and I'll be back with Disenrage in about 40 minutes, half an hour. God, 30 minutes. All right, I'll see you guys soon.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here? 3 months, May 17th. And what brought you? That's difficult to answer.
Eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital.
That's difficult to answer.